We please ask everyone, please take their seats as we will begin promptly. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here today at the Paiva Netto Educational and Social Assistance Center. It's an honor to have you all here with us, as well as those that are watching our broadcast on YouTube Live at the LGW's 27th International Congress on Education. Today, our distinguished guests and educators will expand and broaden our knowledge. This event, the LGW's International Congress on Education, was created by the Legion of Goodwill's president, José de Paiva Netto, and fosters to exchange of educational experiences and strategies to be applied in the field of education. It is with great joy that we welcome you and dedicate our fraternal and peaceful greeting, which opens all of activities of the Legion of Goodwill since its openings in the late 40s. These words, they represent the desire for unity among all individuals, regardless of religious traditions, with respect for all. Words which are summarized in the shout of ecumenical and universal love. God is present and Jesus lives in our hearts forever. And in moments of so much uncertainty in the world, it is essential for us to take a moment and to balance our thoughts and strengthen ourselves emotionally and spiritually. Therefore, I invite all of you at this moment for a moment of silence while we listen to the song Prayer for Tranquility, written by composer Paiva Netto. We dedicate this special moment of reflection to all educators who strive for an equitable education, especially honoring the professionals who work in inclusive education with children and adolescents who are not always embraced and understood by our society. Of reflection and unity of hearts and minds, I now invite the representative of the Legion of Goodwill in the United States, Mr. Danilo Parmegiani, for the opening remarks of this event.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Paiva Netto Educational Center. This is a reality now, and we are celebrating our first anniversary. Oh, it's amazing to remember the beautiful work that this wonderful community of Newark worked for almost 7 years to rebuild and renovate a place that had been abandoned for almost 2 decades in this community, and turn it through the work of love and dedication and caring for those who are in need, transformed this building into a center of excellence, not just to support with the services for the early childhood education provided here every day, but also to expand the social and humanitarian work of the Legion of Goodwill that we have been doing with the support of so many collaborators and volunteers for many decades. And the LGW in the United States was established here in the year of 1986. And now we are here. We are together. We are celebrating this achievement. And we are doing this in the best way possible, celebrating this first anniversary, coming together to talk about inclusion and equity in education. So nothing is more important if we want to build a society that will be more fair, more peaceful for everybody, that we look at our new generations and give them the chances that they deserve to grow and thrive in society in a way that they can not just feel included, but also supported and invited to be the agents necessary for the transformations. But guys, today is also a very special day. Today is March the 2nd, and Paiva Netto, who is honored with his name here in the center, and who is the president of the Legion of Goodwill and the creator of the pedagogy of affection and the pedagogy of the ecumenical citizen that formed the educational line of the Legion of Goodwill and its unique approach to form brain and heart. He is turning 83 today. So we are sending our love to him because of all the work that he accomplished in a life dedicated to doing goodwill in the world, in 7 countries, with all the work of the Legion of Goodwill and all his especially support and contribution to education. So thank you very much, everyone, for your presence, and have a wonderful Congress.
Thank you so much, Danilo, for your opening remarks. And it's our joy and gratitude for the presence of our guests and friends of the Legion of Goodwill. And today we want to salute Ms. Grazi Pinto, Ms. Sharon Hamilton Getz, Dr. Scott Carlin, and Mrs. Carla Nunes. Be welcome. Our joy and gratitude, we also want to thank Dr. Scott Carlin for being here with us. Dr. Carlin is a professor of geography and environmental sustainability at Long Island University in New York. He co-chaired the 66th United Nations Civil Society Conference on Education for Global Citizenship, Achieving the Sustainable Development Goals Together, held in the Republic of Korea, and we invite him to greet everyone with a brief message.
Thank you very much. And good morning to all of you. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me restate that. Good morning, global citizens. It's a pleasure to be here. We are all here on Earth in this together, literally, figuratively, and that's how I'd like you to hear my remarks as a global citizen. I also want you to hear my remarks as a love letter to each and every one of you, because really, it is from the heart that we begin our conversations and build connection, and it's from connection that we can achieve, these amazing goals of equity and inclusion in this generation. I was born in 1962, the year Rachel Carson published Silent Spring, a book about the dangers of pesticides. And she wrote, if we're going to live so intimately with pesticides and other industrial chemicals, eating and drinking them, taking them into the very marrow of our bones, we had better know something about their nature and their power. This insight is one of the most profound insights of my lifetime. It's fair to say that I have fallen in love with this new understanding of intimacy. Rachel Carson called on us to see the harm that we were creating inside of our own bodies, inside of our children's bodies, by the actions of our society. In 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. offered another deeply prophetic declaration. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny. Decades later, the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh codified this insight into a new worldview that he called interbeing. Our human beingness is not one of isolation or individualism. No, our true nature is interbeing. I am the food I eat. I am the water that falls from the clouds. Everything in the universe exists in a state of flow, a state of becoming. We live in this inescapable network of mutuality. I don't think the American culture quite understands this just yet, but we do in fact live this way. This is a material and physical reality, but it's more than that. Rachel Carson is correct. Intimacy is a pathway for expanding our understanding of the sacred nature of coexistence. I do some work in Wyandanch, Long Island, on children's environmental health. Equity and inclusion is central to this project, and I coordinate this project, and I have my personal mission of community transformation. I envision Wyandanch as a learning hub for rethinking the mission of education and our obligations as global citizens. So I am really here to learn from you today and to bring that to this community on Long Island where I work. By the way, I've relocated to New Jersey this past year, and I have retired from Long Island University. In his climate encyclical, Pope Francis developed a framework that he called integral ecology, that the social, the environmental, these are all interconnected. And this is how I approach my work at the United Nations. There's a small group of organizations, international organizations, working to transform the United Nations with the same message of love that you teach here. Going forward, I hope we can work together on this mission of equity and inclusion for all, from a new ethical, moral, and scientific foundation of truth and human rights. And thank you so very much.
Thank you, Dr. Carlin, for your remarks and the importance of human actions in our planet. All right. So we would like to remind everyone that our program today, there will be a sequence of presentations by our distinguished speakers, and followed by 2 pedagogical workshops that will bring practical actions to enrich your classroom strategies. You can jot down your questions, this is very important, alongside your email address, as we will share them with our speakers, and they will answer them today or later by email. And now we begin by presenting our first speaker, Miss Barbara Clark. She is a graduate of Spelman College, Atlanta, Georgia, and Indiana University. She was the supervisor of special services in New Jersey and retired as a director of special services at the Orange Public Schools District. In both positions, Ms. Clark was instrumental in coordinating and supervising special education programs for thousands of students following state and federal laws and guidelines. She will present on inclusion, fostering each child's academic, social, and emotional growth.
Thank you for that inspiring introduction. And thanks for inviting me to join in this conference. This is my 3rd international conference on equity, inclusion, and equality. My first was in 1989, sponsored by the Council of Exceptional Children, CEC. It was in San Francisco. The keynote speaker at that conference was a gentleman with cerebral palsy. He said that his first few years of school were spent in the CP Center. He later left the CP Center to enroll at a public school. He was saddened when he went back to the CP Center many years ago, and he saw most of the same people still there. He credits leaving the school with his success. He also was very prophetic in that he emphasized the importance of his public school peers being associated and developing relationships and having knowledge of a person with a disability. He thought that as these young people grew up and had their own careers, teachers, politicians, doctors, whatever, that they would be in the decision-making process where they could make decisions that would impact the lives of people. And they thought, with the knowledge of having associated with him, that they would be more empathetic, there would be more compassion and empathy and respect for people with disabilities. I was extremely fortunate to be invited to the 2012 International Conference of the Legion of Goodwill in Sao Paulo, Brazil. It was excellent, outstanding, the best conference that I've ever attended. It was run totally by the staff. It was facilitated, my going there was facilitated by Samara and Maria Albuquerque, who taught at Lincoln Avenue School. And I was just really blessed and fortunate to be able to attend this conference. I was very impressed with the accomplished, dedicated gentleman. I visited some of the schools. He was a music teacher, and his kids were just performing so well. He has dignity, respect for them. They had everything they needed. They had musical instruments. They had a nice choir. I visited the schools. I saw the students in cribs, the babies who were just 4 months old, being nurtured and spoken to by caring adults. I saw the 4 dental chairs where dentists came in and took care of their students and their health needs. I met social workers who talked to the families and helped them with employment and any other things that they were in need of. The most impressive thing was it was hands-on, very interactive. Everything at that conference we developed, we used our minds to see how we could come up with solutions to some of the issues that we were facing with solidarity, with inclusion. So it was a very good conference. I wanted to open my remarks today by thinking of creating environments that were inclusive at home, in school, in the workplace, in local communities, for society as a whole. And I found myself focusing on alternative attitudes, beliefs, and values that can influence one's way of thinking and behaving as we approach the issue of inclusion. One can choose to be positive or negative to facilitate belonging or isolation. One can accept or reject, can value or dismiss as important, can cooperate or resist, collaborate or divide, can share or withhold, support or discourage, focus on strengths or see only weaknesses. One can be caring or indifferent, nurturing or hindering, empowering or discouraging, and finally, one can include or exclude. For today, the big picture question is, how do we change these habits of mind that influence our choices and views of inclusive learning environments? How do we create accessible, accepting, and enriching environments for all children and youth, regardless of their appearance, of their means of communication, regardless of how they come to us, varied social habits and patterns of behavior. In response to those big questions, I submit to you 3 important elements of my vision for rich and healthy inclusive environments. Each of these elements is intended to foster each child's academic, social, and emotional growth. Element 1, which we all probably agree to here, a belief that all students can learn, an appreciation for the diversity and among the students and families we serve, a shared philosophy. It is my vision of a rich, inclusive environment. There are clearly expressed high expectations and goals established for each child. High expectations are held regardless of a child's learning, health, physical, sensory, behavioral, or communication status. This means not prejudging and appreciating the value of the child's gifts and accentuating the positive to motivate and activate student learning. At the above are influenced by, all of the above are influenced by our attitudes. They make a big difference. Do we inspire enthusiasm and self-confidence, or do our words and actions lead to self-doubt? An appreciation for the diversity among students and families we serve. Maya Angelou once said, "We all should know that diversity makes for a rich tapestry, and we must understand that all threads of the tapestry are equal in value, no matter what their color." In my vision of inclusion, there should be multiple pathways in the teaching learning process. I was looking for, I don't throw away anything, so I had some lesson plans from Samara Malaman when I had gone to her class to visit. And it was just so inclusive. She had differentiated instruction. She had various strategies for kids who were not able to comprehend, and she made sure that they got ample opportunities to participate. So my vision also recognizes that one size does not fit all. There is no single technique or strategy that offers a quick fix for learning or behavioral challenges. We also need to frequently ask who is benefiting from our instructional decisions and selections. A shared philosophy. Lastly, my vision of effective inclusion is one in which there is a high degree of trust, respect, and cooperation between and among staff, and families. The school community personnel, families, students should adopt a shared philosophy that promotes access and demonstrates a collective enthusiasm for accessibility. To summarize, in conclusion, a mindset and an attitude that intentionally and explicitly embraces and values diversity, my vision of inclusion celebrates and respects the natural state and reality of human differences. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clark, for your words and considerations, your stories. We appreciate you sharing your experiences with us today. Now we will have a special panel of experienced practitioners from our community working with inclusive education. Ms. Grace Blanco, Mr. Luis Enrique, and Mr. Brian Donovan. We will follow their contributions in this special roundtable, focusing on the theme, Perspectives of Inclusive Education, Early Childhood, Elementary, and High School. We will start with Miss Grace Blanco. She has a master's degree in education leadership and a bachelor's degree in psychology from St. Elizabeth University, as well as an early childhood leadership certificate from Harvard University. Early in her career, Ms. Blanco was a preschool teacher and soon after became a preschool director when pre-K became part of the PK-12 public school system in the Abbott district in the year 2000. Ms. Blanco is the Ironbound Early Learning Center Program Director in Newark. Ms. Blanco, the floor is yours.
It's such a pleasure and an honor to be here today among distinguished professionals and such an amazing audience. I mean, I appreciate the fact that you came out on a Saturday rainy morning, right? Very good. Thank you so much. So we're talking about, what I'm talking about is very near and dear to my heart. Been doing this for so many years. Right? I have a parent here. Hi, Mom. A former parent. Let's talk about what is childhood, right? Childhood is the child's development age that goes between 0 to 5 years old. Some say that goes up to 8. However, we're going to stop at 5 for the sake of this forum. And inclusion really is about providing welcoming environments and supportive environments for all children, not only for children with special needs, not only for children who are English language learners or dual language learners, but all children. They all come from different circumstances. We need to meet them where they are and bring them up, right? So, regardless of their backgrounds or ability, that's what we aim to, that's what we understand as inclusion, right? So there's a little bit different in how we provide services for children with special needs and services for children in general in this age group. For the 0 to 3 age group is a little bit different than for the 3 to 5-year-olds. Like I said before, 3 to 5-year-olds are preschoolers. Preschoolers became part of the school system in 1998/2000 in a court order versus a case that was fought in court in the New Jersey Supreme Court called Abbott versus Burke. Until then, preschool was only offered in private settings, not in the public school system. Mr. Enriquez provides in the school setting also preschool programs, and we saw also the state collaborates with private local child care centers like the one I run to also provide early learning education for 3 and 4-year-olds. We do follow the guidance from the Newark Public Schools, the Office of Early Childhood, the same way the public school does. So as part of the school system, we must be an inclusive and accessible program for all eligible 3 and 4-year-olds in New Jersey, okay? So that's not a choice, that's the law. All right, so yeah, New Jersey Department of Education really expects early childhood programs to become inclusive and accessible to all 3-year-olds. And the Disability Act goes beyond, expects children with disabilities to have access to high quality, not any kind of early learning program, high quality and inclusive programs that will individualize and meet their needs so they become part of the classroom environment and achieve their full potential. So inclusiveness, and you talked a little bit about this, inclusive and equality. Inclusiveness does not mean to offer the same to all, right? We have to recognizing equality is about providing services and resources that rather are targeted to each child. We have to know where they're coming from, give the supports that they need so they can get the boost that they need to get to their goals and achieve their full potential. In early childhood education, I don't know if you have the slides, but anyway, in early childhood education, we aim to offer inclusive programs for all 3 and 4-year-olds. Inequality in the slide had a nice picture that is the next one. Can you show? That one. So that tells it all, right? It's not about offering the same to all. Some of us need an extra boost, an extra support. So first, we as educators in early childhood have to notice them. Once you notice them, right, we then provide them the individualized supports that they need to actually meet their full potential. Again. So I have just a little story. Every morning I go in every classroom and I greet the children with my thumbs up. Right? I say, good morning, everyone. How you feeling today? Thumbs up. And I noticed this little 3-year-old girl. She has difficulty with fine motor skills. And she could not really put her thumb up, right? So I go around the table. They're having breakfast at the time. I go around the table, and I'm like, how about we do a fist, right? She does want to participate in activities. She wants to be included, right? But she's not quite there yet for that activity. So every morning I go in again, and we go a step farther, right? And a little progress is achieved every morning. And every time she accomplished more towards her very simple skill for most of us, thumbs up, right? It was celebrated by her classmates, by her teachers, by me. A few weeks pass by, I go in, good morning, Class C. How's everybody feeling today? And this little girl is the first one with this both thumbs up, right? With a big smile from one cheek to the other. So she felt part of the community. She accomplished that goal. And that's all about what inclusive and equity is. This is a simple story, but it's something that happens in early childhood programs every single day. And that's how we make it happen. So little things is not a big thing, little things, okay? So the 0 to 3 age group, the way special needs services occur for them, even though they're not a part of the Newark public school system, they also protected under the disability law. And their service is a little bit different, though. The services are provided within their natural environment, usually the home setting. And if they are enrolled in a child care center like this, for instance, it can be also provided here. They will receive an individualized plan of service, and once they do that, the early intervention specialist will then either go to the house or come to the center to provide the services according to the individualized plan for them. The preschoolers, it's a little bit different. The services are provided through the Newark public schools to the districts, right? They also have an individualized plan for them with goals, what kind of service they will receive, and the therapist that they will be providing services for them will then provide services within the school setting. They must be registered, enrolled in a preschool setting in order to receive services at that age group, okay? So it's very beneficial to include children with special needs in our programs, not only for those with special needs, because they see their peers, right, doing some things that they cannot do. They observe, they imitate, right? And they're exposed to so much more materials and activities. And at the same time, for those typically developing children, it's so important also. They see differences, right? It helps them to develop empathy and tolerance. Again, I talked about the IEP and just want to really re-emphasize that the IEP, the individualized plan, either for the infant and toddlers or for the preschoolers, is a legal document. It aims to have specific goals for each child, right? It's equity. It's not one document that fits all. It's not one, and it aims for them to be achieving their full potential, becoming engaged in classroom activities, and therefore also members of that classroom. And the reason why there's so many faces for inclusion, right? You can talk about inclusion in very different ways. You can talk about inclusion about different races, the LGBT community. There's so many different ways about talking about inclusion and equity. I chose to talk about specifically children with special needs because we are in crisis. After the pandemic, okay, the services, there's a very sad reality for services with children with special needs. On one side, right, we had to shut down for a year and a half, right? One side, what we see in our classrooms these days is an increased number of children with special needs. We used to have 2 or 3 in a class. Now we have 6, 5, 6. And on the other side, we have staff shortage. Where are the teachers? Not enough teachers. Regular ed teachers, special education teacher, speech therapists, those that provide those services that they need, occupational therapists. We have a crisis going on, all right? So again, our 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds that we're serving today are pandemic babies. They were born in 2020 and 2021, right? They were deprived from learning experiences. They had limited social interactions. They had much more life adversities. We here in Newark, we work with at-risk children. We know that. They already have so much on their shoulders. Well, with the pandemic, that only intensified it, right? I have a couple of students that lost a parent, a grandparent, lost employment, food insecurity. This all added to their plates, right? And some of them that may need services were not getting the services at optimum level. So with that in mind, we need to understand that more needs to be done, right? And when we came back, really, we slowly are reestablishing services. Because again, I told you, we don't have enough staff to provide those services. But then we have this huge number of children that need services. How do we put that puzzle together, right? Our children, our teachers are seeing severe language development delays. And development delays in general, that usually parents, when they came to us, they already have noticed it. But those parents, during the pandemic, they didn't take the children to the park. They didn't take the children to a birthday party so they could compare. Well, my child maybe need supports. You know, they don't. Not until they register them in our school that they could see their child's classmates. They said, something's wrong. But then we missed 3 years that they could have been receiving early intervention services, right? Which are so crucial for this age group. And challenging behaviors, unfortunately. I have to talk about a little bit about neuroscience. We know so much more about how the brain develops these days, and you talk a little bit about that. Appreciate that. This 0 to 5-year-old kid, am I going over my time? Sorry. I'll be finished soon. 3 minutes. So neuroscience tells us that children who experience positive interactions and are exposed to rich experiences in early years go on to become healthier and more successful, not only in school, but in life. That's reality. Our children missed that for a year and a half. Think about that. Unfortunately, the opposite is true as well. Trauma, exposed to family violence, poverty, lack of access to high-quality learning experiences can negatively affect the child's early brain development and have long-term consequences. As a result, we have too many kids in one class. We have not enough professionals to serve those children. And more special education staff are leaving the field, leaving our children falling even behind. In my end, what I have control, what we have been trying to do, I hire more staff to support those teachers. I provide professional development, that is effective so they can be more equipped to work with those children. I'm working on staff retention, so I don't want those that I have to leave. And we're partnered with for health, mental health providers, partnerships with mental health, right? For teachers, for children, because sometimes they need more than special ed education. They need mental health support. And my time's up. And that's it. I guess what I hope is that this is all I have in my control. I don't have control of hiring speech therapists. No, I only need a couple minutes. No, less than a minute. I don't have control about hiring special needs teachers. I don't have control about hiring speech therapists or occupational therapists. That's the job of the Newark Public Schools. And they're struggling, right? I know they want to, they're struggling. So, but I just hope the lawmakers see this as a serious problem and find solutions so we can continue, in fact, right, provide true inclusion and equity for our most vulnerable little ones. And that's it. Thank you so much.
And highlighting our individual uniqueness. Thank you. And we now listen to the words of Mr. Luís Henriques. Born in Portugal, he has built a distinguished career in education in the United States, grounded in a solid academic background with a bachelor's degree in history and a master's in educational administration and supervision from Montclair State University. His professional path has seen him in various roles at Eastside High School, vice principal, athletic director, and social studies teacher, before taking on the role of principal at Oliver Street School. Mr. Henriques, you may begin your presentation.
Well, I'm definitely going to start out by thanking, obviously, the Legion of Goodwill. We've had a long-standing relationship since my tenureship at Oliver Street School, and I'm very proud of that relationship, and obviously the friendships that I've built. They've been instrumental, the Legion of Goodwill, in assisting my families, and I'm proud to say that I've been instrumental as well in assisting the Legion of Goodwill, but it's definitely a reciprocal relationship that I'm proud to be here this morning and to build on that relationship, right? So for those of you who don't know Oliver Street Schools, I'm very proud, 1,040 students from pre-K3 to 8th grade. So it's a wide range of age groups, right? So the practices will differ tremendously obviously from pre-K 3, like Ms. Blanco was saying, but all the way to 8th grade as well. My presentation will be mostly geared directly towards the educators in this room. The slides that I've prepared might be a little bit lengthy. I'm not going to go too deep into them, but they're going to be available for everybody afterwards because they go directly deep into practices that you can take for yourselves. We have a lot of educators here, teachers or future teachers, right? Good. But the parents at least could understand what you can expect from your teachers, right, in the public system, whether public or private, but obviously what we work forward towards, right? So again, the specific practices, not just focused on IEP students, because when we think of inclusive practices, we think directly a child with an IEP, right? So the individualized educational plan, but we know that every child is individual. We always say in our profession, right, we're not, this is not an assembly line of children, right? We, in any regular job, so the output is very clear. The output in education many times is standardized testing. Well, most of the time, at least in the United States, standardized testing. But every child is not the same, right? So every teacher deals with different students. That batch, let's say if you're making a strawberry pie, children are not strawberries, right? If you're making strawberry pies, that batch of strawberries is a little bit damaged, you're going to take it right back to that vendor. We cannot send our children back, right? And most people don't really realize that. Our politicians seem to not realize that ever. They need results, but oftentimes they don't understand how to obtain those results, and they don't listen to the right people to get feedback on obtaining those results. So my first slide, it's very simple, right? What is inclusive education? We know that, and you'll hear kind of a little bit of reiteration, but it's needed, right? So inclusive is to make sure an approach to ensure all students, regardless of abilities, disabilities, their backgrounds. In our communities, we deal obviously with the immigration challenge. They are the new Americans, whether some people like it or not. They are here. These are our children once they enter our classrooms. So in one simple definition, a true inclusive educational environment is an equitable environment that addresses the diverse learning needs. That word equity, right, is going to come up often in my presentation, right? Equity versus equality, as Ms. Blanco said, right? So that's a good thing. We're on the same page with that. And so 6 main topics: the importance of inclusive education in the elementary schools, promoting diversity and acceptance first for the students from a young age, right? Respecting diversity and that acceptance for all children, fostering social skills and relationships. It will support academic growth, because in the end, that's why children go to school, obviously. That is the number one thing we want to see right away. What does the report card look like? How are they performing on the test scores, right? But obviously, emotional well-being is a key part of it. Preparing students for the real world, because once students leave high school, right, thinking ahead towards Mr. Donovan's presentation, what will they be doing? So all children, regardless of disability, social background, and of course, encouraging collaboration and teamwork. Inclusive classrooms will foster a collaborative environment where students are working together, supporting each other, building their social skills. We have one slide up, so it's a reflection question. So the picture that's going to come up, so I need all of you to think about it on the next slide once it gets to it. It's very similar to Ms. Blanco's slide, but it really is a reflection, right? So for all educators here and all parents, I was going to ask for some participation, right? But what you do see on your left slide, right, would be considered that equality, right? Thinking that every child, if we give every child the same thing, it's like, well, everybody has the same notebook, everybody has a Chromebook, everybody has a computer, so they must be able to perform, right? And that's always not, well, we know in education that that's not the case, right? The community doesn't always know this either. So what is equity, right? So equity is ensuring that every student has access to resources, support, and opportunities they need regardless of background circumstances, right? Now, those background circumstances are going to vary widely, okay? Because again, not just IEPs, some children don't have IEPs and they need a lot of assistance, right? It's about addressing, moving in the ideal world, right? Post-equity, it really is about removing barriers, right? Removing all the systemic barriers and inequalities that will prevent students from reaching their full potential. And again, involving those additional resources for those students because, and especially in large cities or in rural areas, socioeconomic status, language, race, and disability, the top four, right? So we talk about the disabilities with the IEPs, whether it's a known disability or not, and the IEP is in place. But the other real main issues, socioeconomic, race, and of course their background, right? Huge, huge, huge. And of course the goal is to level the playing field, right? Removing those barriers. In the ideal world, everybody would have access to the resources at home. We would all be accepted going into the particular schools that we go into and within the communities that we live in as well. So equality versus equity, and the mind shift needs to continue to happen as parents and educators, moving away from equality, but always having that equity term in our minds, right? We need equity, not equality. So again, removing those systematic barriers, because equity, again, will be aiming to provide the students with the support resources requiring to succeed, taking into account individual circumstances, right? And that takes a lot of planning on behalf of educators, because in the next slides you will see that they will be geared towards that. Teachers, the main component of teaching and education and into addressing inequality or lack of equity in the classroom and making sure students are included will be the planning and resources that the teachers are provided with. So you'll then see equality and equity on the picture slide, right? Because we know that everybody on the equality picture, every child received the same box, right? But the barrier was not removed, right? So the ideal picture would be that fence is not even there. Nobody needs a box to stand on. There is no barrier in front of those children. They have access to the curriculum, to the education that they deserve. In that case, they're watching a baseball game. But really, it really is a powerful picture that now two educators have shared with you all, because it needs to resonate with us, as sometimes politics just throws, they think, you know, once we get funding, we're like, well, we gave this school the same amount of money, we gave the other school the same amount of money, or even districts, right? And that's not the case. Or they expect you to buy the same things, or the other school and the other teacher bought these books, but that might not work in the other school or the other classroom. So that is, we really have to be very, very mindful of how we use our resources and not just throw money, right? And we know, right? We think like, here come these federal dollars here in the United States, right? But again, it's really being mindful how we spend that money, right? And I know I'm fortunate to be speaking to a couple of people who have worked with me, and they know that as I have led and grown in my academic and professional career, it really is being very mindful and making people aware in our schools of what they need to do to service the children, and being very specific on how they plan, and of course the resources that they request of me. We'll now just briefly review the academic benefits of inclusive education, but again, long slide, don't want to read through it all, but the educators here and the parents really take this at the end. You could request it from Mr. Danilo and the team, so you could take it and plan. But again, Increased academic achievement, right? That's the first and foremost. When we see students performing better, if they have IEPs, they're going to be beating their IEP goals. But if they're bilingual students, they're now learning the language here. They're being accepted. If they come from a low socioeconomic background, they don't always have the assistance at home that another student might have a parent at home. The parents could afford tutoring, right? So in a real inclusive classroom setting, and then even extending into the inclusive school setting, right, we will have those enhanced learning opportunities for the children, for the students, which then will improve their social skills. They need it for the real world. It will boost their self-confidence. And again, personalized learning, differentiating instruction. This is a difficult term, as the educators in the room will attest to. Differentiating instruction takes a lot of time. Parents with children here, you have bilingual children in the room. Your teachers, especially the great ones, they spend their Saturdays and Sundays planning, because in order to differentiate instruction, it's all about planning. The teaching profession, 50%, maybe more sometimes, will be about planning. Planning. And between 8:20 to 3:05, the teachers do not have time to do that. So thank them when they go home and then take another 2 hours with their children. Somehow they get to plan at 10 at night, at 11 at night, Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings, Sunday nights, right? But again, planning for that personalized learning, because the ultimate goal of education is prepping children for the real world, right? When they become adults, what are they going to do, right? It's a deeper conversation with children with IEPs, because, right, depending on the disability, but sometimes children don't even have an IEP, some that needed an IEP or 504 plans, but really making sure that all of the children will become successful adults and contributing members of our societies. Social emotional benefits, very important in inclusive education as well. Empathy is a big word, right? As we build children and they become adults, they need to empathize. So again, empathy, understanding, right? And putting yourselves in other people's shoes and knowing how they feel. It enhances their social skills. It creates a sense of belonging. It improves their self-esteem, promoting diversity and inclusion, of course, and again, the emotional well-being. But again, these are all practices in the classroom. So when we talk about inclusive practices, in the next slides, it will be directly in the classroom what teachers and school administrators must do, right? And it goes beyond that, right? Because sometimes resources are needed, programs might be needed, that we do need the resources. We are very fortunate that in the city of Newark, the largest city in the state of New Jersey, that we do have the resources available. The funds come down to our schools, and we do have the resources available. I could say at Oliver Street School, the school that I'm very proud to be principal of, in terms of physical resources, we have everything. We have the physical spaces. We have, whether it's books, extra books that we need, electronics for the students, right? But it does come to the expertise of the staff members, right, in guiding them. Very important. And that's when the strategies for inclusive education come forth. Strategy number one is that differentiated instruction. So that's when a teacher has to realize, in the administrative team, that not just IEPs, right, but every student that enters your classroom, that you really understand and you have the know-how to plan properly with differentiated instruction, right? And again, that comes with flexible content, providing different materials to support the different learning styles, because every child will be different. And they're going to say, well, it might take a child even 2 minutes to process when a question is asked, and it's about the teacher knowing his or her students and waiting and coming back to that child and allowing that child to participate. Varied processes, right? Again, strategies to engage the students, allowing them, very important, the multiple products. allowing students to demonstrate their understanding in different ways. Quite often we get tied up in standardized testing again, right? And many children don't do well in testing, and they have a time constraint that obviously there are panels who determine how long the child should complete a task in, whether it's an hour or 2 hours. But some children might not do well within those 2 hours, and then they are held accountable, and our schools are being held accountable for those tests within those 2 hours. So again, the teachers and the schools understand this. The challenge will be politically always above the schools. But allowing the students to complete projects to demonstrate their learning, presentations, written assignments. Some students are very artistic, right? And they could speak, they can sing, and they could put together songs, they could write songs, but yet they're being held accountable to standardized testing, right? And again, that's not very inclusive, as we know. And adjusting the environment. So once the teacher and the admins know their students, the classroom environment is very, very important. So setting routines, creating supporting learning environments for all students is very, very important. And the classroom, all classrooms should look different, especially based on the age groups, but then based on the needs and also what's posted around the classroom. There is another strategy. So UDL, Universal Design for Learning, is a rubric. It's a framework that guides the design of instructional goals that educators should use just as a great practice, right? To, again, design lesson plans and prepare for their students. And it touches, again, multiple means of representation means, again, cater. This is presenting the content to students as well, whether it's visual, whether it's allowing them to sit in groups, whether it's preparing for graphic organizers based on the age level. We heard about pre-K, a lot of color, a lot of pictures, right, so the children could learn their sounds. But as you move up the grade bands too, some children, right, they're all at different levels. They might need some pictures too. They might need prompts. They might need graphic organizers to start their writing. They're not at that level yet. And different means of engaging, right? Being creative. We're very fortunate. I'll talk about, I have Mr. Paiva in the audience, right? I'll welcome anybody here in this panel. You got to get to me first, right? Don't just show up at my door at Oliver, but to really visit her class when she returns. Right? Because she really is amazing, right? So, and her experiences, but the time that she takes, right, and those are examples, the times that she takes to know her students, right, and to really plan those lessons around those students. She teaches bilingual Portuguese second grade, right? So her classroom is bilingual Portuguese, and in this community, we know that all the students have come from Brazil at this point. But she understands that they've also come from different states in Brazil. Their backgrounds are different, their experiences are different, and they need different approaches on how she relates, even the way she speaks with them, and understands how they speak to her. It's huge. So whether some students lack the ability to either express themselves, or the terminology might be different, and she has that empathy for those students, right? And I've had the experience, and it's been amazing to see her children grow. Really, really amazing between September and now March 2nd. And again, peer support. So when teachers plan, ensuring that you could pair tutors and pair students, and it depends on the age level, but children are very empathetic of each other, right? You pair those students, again, with the different abilities for them to assist each other. You have the buddy systems, right, where they help navigating the classrooms if there's a child who has either physical needs or obviously has IEPs. Peer modeling, encouraging peers to model for their own peers. And once you get to the middle school level, this is very, very effective. Buddy systems, peers, having students sit in groups all the time because they do learn from each other. And very important, peer feedback. because students will grade, they're not grading, they're understanding how to use a rubric to check their work. So they swap their papers, they're guided by the rubrics, and they check their work to make sure, again, and they give the feedback. And everybody feels included when that happens, right? Because you have students that might be too shy, they don't want to speak up. But again, with peer feedback, everybody is really a participant in the classroom. And nearing the end, it would be creating that inclusive classroom, right? As you plan, or as a teacher plans, and again, this is ongoing communication, because you might need the classroom resources as well. Communication with your administrators, the teachers here, and the parents, if you ever feel that the school is not being inclusive enough, that you might need certain resources. Some strategies are flexible seating arrangements, visual supports within the classroom as well. And again, it varies widely between pre-K 3 to 8, but you will see things such as anchor charts, sentence starters, right, to assist the students with their writing, accessible materials, having manipulatives for math, having all these materials on hand for the students, making sure classrooms are clutter-free. This is huge, right? You need only what you need in those classrooms. And as you plan, any future teachers in here, or anybody listening to me, make sure that you know exactly what you need, but clutter-free environment. Because children with diverse needs, again, they will get distracted by what's not needed in those rooms. So they'll be looking, and the smaller the child is, especially first, second, third grade, all the way to kindergarten, you might want them to focus on the phonics lessons, and yet they're looking all around to what's not needed in that room. So clutter-free. Sensory considerations, because we know everybody might have a Chromebook, right? But what else do they need? Do they need headphones? Do they need text-to-speech? Do they need fidgets for their hands, right? So simple, right? Sometimes we as adults might need that too. I always share my stories, right? Every time I have a piece of paper in my hand, since second grade, I remember that. I kind of roll things up, right? So after 24 years in education, here I am still sitting at a meeting, rolling my little papers, right? All right. But again, children need that, and we need to understand that sometimes, whether it's a piece of clay for them to grasp and just kind of get them a little bit more calmer as they engage within the lessons as well. And then, of course, diverse representations. What texts are we showing our children? In a diverse community such as Newark right here, right? I am very blessed and fortunate to work in Newark, in all our schools, in the curriculum, especially the ELA curriculum. It's very, very diverse. So all the novels that our children read, and these are committees at Central Office of Teaching and Learning. The novels are they're very well selected, representative of our community in Newark. And again, to make sure that all students understand each other and understand each other's background as well. But most importantly, really, I always say, the educator needs to know the students and their background. Okay, this is so important, again, to ensure that it's really a truly inclusive classroom. The educator and those school principals and all admin in the school and everybody that works, they need to know the background of the students, right? Because we can't be presenting them or asking them to write about something that they have no experience of, right? So an example could be a child just arrives from Brazil at Oliver Street School, and they're from a rural area, and we're talking to them about urban environments. They have no clue. Or vice versa. You're talking about the nice field trip to the farm, and some children have never been in a farm, right? They can't write about a farm if we don't teach them. So it goes very much beyond the IEP, because again, those are building the supportive classrooms, and again, the diverse in focusing on the individual need. To conclude, right, with that real focus on the individual student, but doing it with fidelity. So this term fidelity, right, We can't get into our schools in the morning like it's just going to be another day of work. It's never another day of work, right? I would like to say that 100% of educators go to work knowing that everybody is different and they empathize. We know that's not true, but I'm very proud to say that very close to 100% of educators do feel that way, right? And mostly what they need is professional development to get to that level, to empathize, to understand their students. They need time, but again, addressing the needs of the individual with fidelity is crucial because an educator cannot bring their personal biases into the classroom ever, right? Whether it's political, whether it's racial, whether it's socio-economical, economically, right? And we often know, and this is what I don't usually like, is when politicians, and we know politicians want to run the show in terms of running education, but they don't always have the right people advising them. And this is true, and I think in quite many countries, right? Educators are the best people to advise how to run education, in this case, inclusive education, especially in an ever-growing world where people, the immigration phenomenon is affecting not just the United States, but everybody listening to us in various countries today. So we need to be mindful and appreciative of each other, cognizant of, again, the different backgrounds, professional development and planning for that with events such as this one today. And lastly, the funding and the human resources, right? Those are needed for in order for us to build and promote the inclusive environments. So if the funding is there, it's great. But once again, we go back to equality and equity. Are we using our funds correctly? Not just throwing the funds thinking, well, I gave everybody the same resource, but maybe that person didn't need any resource at all. The other one needed double resources. The other one needed triple the resources. And be mindful of that, right? And not falling into sometimes pressures that everybody must receive the same thing just for the sake of spending money, but really putting the funds where they belong. And of course, human resources, right? Funds are needed for human resources as well. And as I end, the biggest challenge is human resources, right? Whether it's filling a vacancy in every school, but obviously filling it with people that will take their profession seriously and always do it with fidelity, and then making sure that everybody understands, as I'll end it, that children, every child is different. Every child has their needs. Let's move just away from the IEP, but knowing that every child is different. And we could take that example of the strawberry pies. We can't send them back, right? So you get 30 children, and you got to understand that they're all different. And once we get that in our minds, right, parents, staffing, all staffing, politicians, the people again that are in these committees, but I think we'll be moving towards a more equitable world, and an event like today is one step. But thank you so much.
Enriquez, for your highlights and talking about equity and equality. We will now listen to Professor Mr. Brian Donovan. Mr. Donovan is an educational leader with training in social studies and bilingual education. He majored in geography and education and minored in Spanish at the Montclair State University. He completed his master's in educational leadership from Montclair State University and led the Eastside High School bilingual program for 6 years. He is currently an instructional vice principal at Eastside High School. Mr. Donovan, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Bon dia. Buenos dias. All right, trilingual, that's what I like to hear. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you. Thank you again, Danilo, for inviting me to present at this Congress. It's an amazing honor. It's been wonderful learning more about the Legion of Goodwill. I knew very little over the past year, but now we're developing connections with Eastside High School, where I'm vice principal, and the work that you do both here and abroad is amazing, and it's exciting to be inside this building. It's my first time inside of this building. congratulations on the work that you do here, and I look to work with you guys even more. And full circle, when I was studying at Montclair State University and placed as a student teacher at Eastside High School, I was placed with Lewis and Reeks as my cooperating teacher. We met in 2006, and I student taught at Eastside High School in 2007. And I do want to talk a lot about my background in education and my experiences, because that really helped shape who I am today as an educator. And I encourage all educators to reflect on why they became educators, and understand that that's a very important thing to do every year, because each year we get wrapped up in a lot of the difficult work and the whirlwind of testing and paperwork and everything, that we oftentimes forget why we became educators. And for most of us, it's because we love students, we love teaching, and we love to see our kids grow, and we want to make an impact in students' lives and in the community. So that's one thing that we should always remember. So I studied geography. Dr. Carlin, I mean, there's like 2 of us left in the world that studied geography. It's great that you're here. Michael Jordan studied geography too. For those of you who did not know, Michael Jordan studied geography. So I studied geography, and because of that, I had a great thirst to learn about the world and learn about different cultures. And so I studied abroad 3 times through Montclair State University, once in New Zealand, once in Costa Rica, and once in Peru. So I ended up learning Spanish, and that really kind of influenced where I am today. I don't think I would have ended up here in the Ironbound community as a bilingual history teacher if this never happened. And to rewind a little bit, I want to talk about my high school experience. In high school, I didn't have a great start. I was failing classes. I was respectful. I wasn't a troublemaker, but I didn't have good grades. And my parents rejected the schools from evaluating me for an individual educational plan, an IEP. But I eventually was classified, and I got the help that I need. When I was in 11th grade, I think was the first time that I learned how to read for comprehension in English, my native language. I failed Spanish in high school, Spanish 1, but I ended up being an educator, successful educator, fluent in Spanish, and I speak Portuguese well, and I'm getting better. Eu falo português mais ou menos, estoy aprendiendo. And that's just important for me to express, because for almost all students, no matter where they are, there's ways to get them to click, and it may be at different points, and maybe be for different reasons, but there's something for everyone, and if the right person is there to help, they will eventually fly. And that eventually happened. I was classified, I was put into a special class, and Miss Nelson sat with me individually in a strategies class, and she taught me how to do my homework and read for comprehension. This was in 11th grade. So then I eventually learned Spanish, and I was placed at Eastside High School, and they were like, well, we need a bilingual teacher. We don't have any regular spots, but we need a bilingual teacher. And I was like, well, I don't know anything about bilingual education. But I had a love for learning about different cultures, different worlds, and like working in the Ironbound here is like traveling. You'll hear different languages, different dialects of Spanish, different dialects of Portuguese spoken throughout the streets, and that's rich. That is something that I think that this community should use and does use as something to celebrate, right? A lot of times people think of immigrant students or students, English language learners, in a deficit sense, and it shouldn't be that way. These are things to build off of, right? So, again, why do you choose this job to be an educator? I have to remind sometimes when I would have department meetings, I would put it up, why are you a teacher? Well, it's because you love human beings. There's a great sense of love that you have. And for me, my philosophy is to lead with love and to teach with love. And that is the foundation for all of this. I think if you don't love the kids you're working with unconditionally, no matter who they are, what they look like, what their issues are, bad strawberry batch or not, you have to do whatever it takes, and just pure love is the great starting point. Because there's a quote that it's attributed to Theodore Roosevelt, but no one knows if it's actually him. It says, Where is it? I wrote it down here. I don't need to read it. It's kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So students can read the vibe of a teacher from an educator. They know who's there to collect a paycheck, and they know who's there, who's not. So if you are struggling with some of the things that you need to have inclusive practices in the classroom, you can learn all that. But you need to go in with love, and that's the best foundation. So if we can move to the next slide, just a little bit of background about me. That's why I feel like it's really helped me be successful in my career is that sense of wanting to build connections with students and build relationships. So it really starts from the top. And now we have the third person to have this image. I remember 4 or 5 years ago, we were in a superintendent's conference with our superintendent, Roger Leone, and he put this image up, and all the administrators in Newark Board of Education, we talked about it. And we said, well, what does this mean? What is equity? What is equality? And it's important to understand that not all students need the same thing. Some students need more, some students need less, but everyone's needs need to be known. And I also wanted to, before I forget, it's important that not just students with an IEP or bilingual students, English language learners, but even the most advanced students need supports, and they need to be pushed, and they need to have something for them. And when I talk a little bit about Eastside High School, which I will in a minute, we really try our best to make sure we have something for everyone. And Mr. Enriquez also hit on a point. So just imagine that you see equity. They all can see over the fence. Well, let's remove the fence. Sure, it's a baseball game, maybe it's safe, but the idea here is, because you will actually see that the image that he showed, originally it's 2 or 3 things, but then there's one without the fence, and it's liberation. We need to free the students of any barriers that prevent them from being successful, and that's our charge as educators. So, school leaders need to think about this shared vision of creating an environment where students, staff members, community members all work towards a shared vision, that they're developing what we want to see the students to be able to do, the life beyond school, after education. What do we want to happen? Everyone should have a voice. It's empowering, and that's really important in recruitment. So when you're doing the interview process and hiring candidates, yeah, we're in a shortage. It's really hard to find staff. But we also want to be really mindful that we want to find people that care. We want to find people that are going to love the students no matter what. And they may not be trained as teachers, but they're going to be in there, they're going to try their best, and they're going to, the initial thing is that they're going to accept students for who they are and do whatever it takes to help them learn. That's one really important thing. Creating a level playing field starts from the top. And in terms of budgeting, you need to know the needs of the students. It's all part of, it's not just the principal's job, it's everyone's job. You need to put all the resources together, figure out, look at the data. What are the needs of these students that we have in front of us? At Eastside High School, we have 2,100 students. Right now, we have 1,050 students in our bilingual program. 1,050 of them are English language learners, and 800 of them are in ESL classes. 250 of them, their parents waived bilingual and ESL services, so they're in regular classes in all English, but they're still developing English. We have over 350 students with IEPs. We have 3 programs. So before I get to the special needs programs, we have 2 bilingual programs. Portuguese, we're the only high school in the city with a bilingual Portuguese program. There's now about 500 students in our bilingual Portuguese program. We have some teachers here today, Ms. Fernandez that teach in that program, and Ms. Antunes, who teaches Portuguese at our school, teaches a lot of our bilingual Portuguese students. And about 500 or more speak Spanish. Brazilian population is the largest population, but because there's so many different Spanish-speaking countries, there's still more Spanish-speaking students overall. And so they're all at different levels of English language proficiency. all have different experiences from the countries they came from. There's a subgroup of bilingual students, English language learners, or they're now called, the state has changed from English language learner to multilingual learners. So they're now MLs, not ELLs. That's a state change in terminology. There's a subgroup called students with interrupted formal education. These are students that have immigrated here, oftentimes by themselves in extreme conditions, that are illiterate or way below grade level in their native language. They don't know how to read or write in their native language, and they're 17 years old, and they've only done up to the first grade in Guatemala. And now they're here, and we have to educate them, and we have to do the best for them. And we might not always know the best way to do it, but we have to figure it out, and we have to ensure that we use funds that provide programming for these students, provide enough staff for these students. And it's difficult, and it may only be 5 students out of 2,000, but they need to have a program, right? And then we have 3 special needs programs. The largest school in the district, the most special needs students, the largest bilingual program. But then we also have some really great things, which I'll touch upon later, where we can advance our students that also include our most advanced students, but our bilingual students and special needs students can participate in these programs as well. Is everything okay? All right. Can we go to the next slide, please? So inclusive practices need to be seen at all different levels in the school. And it could be, and if they're not there already, let's be honest, sometimes you may have a curriculum that may not be that inclusive. It's the job of the teacher, it's the job of the administration to fix that and plan around it. So you can create lesson plans, and you can ensure you can adapt the curriculum, you can create programs, you can create classrooms to make sure that your school is inclusive and has an environment that demonstrates equity. Overall, students need to have access. They need to have access to resources. They need to be able to participate in these programs. All these programs, from the most advanced to whatever other programs that you have, students need to have access and participate. But the most important thing, no matter where they are, they still need support. They need support from teachers. They need support from the administration. Make sure that it's there so that they don't fail. You have to have a relentless push to support students at all levels. And sometimes it's a question of communication and just constantly following up with the students, especially in some of the most advanced programs that we have. And then understanding diversity in secondary schools. Diversity is a really, really important term, a term that I reflect on a lot. What does diversity mean? So, like some of the other presenters have talked about, it's really, 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 really important to get to know your students, to understand their backgrounds, to understand where they come from, to understand what they like, what they don't like. Get to know them. Get to know your students. Teachers, get to know your students. It could be something as simple as an interest survey at the beginning of the school year. What's your name? Who do you live with? How long have you been in the United States for? What language or languages do you speak? We have Stephanie over here. She speaks Spanish and Portuguese fluently, both of them. She graduated from Eastside last year, and I'll talk a little bit more about her and what she was able to do at Eastside High School. I didn't even know she was going to be here today. I think she may be pictured in this presentation. And when you get to know your students, if you do a survey, I tell my students, I can't teach you unless I know you. And I truly believe that. Some of them have varied differences. Some of them are strong in this or are really talented in this, but they may lack here. And it's important for the teacher to know these things and to use these interests to maybe motivate a student that's not motivated. Because this is the way to get them motivated, is to show them that you care about them, find a way to bring them into the content, connect it. Students need to make connections. I really like this one quote here. It's from a Yale website. Just want to read that one out loud. I really, really, really like it. Creating an inclusive classroom climate where all students are encouraged to participate by learning about students' backgrounds and tailoring approaches accordingly. Establishing ground rules for discussing controversial issues and developing and helping students develop deeper racial and socioeconomic awareness. So one of the issues that we face is people don't want to have difficult conversations about race. People don't want to have difficult conversations about ethnicity or about immigration or about very controversial topics. But that goes against equity and inclusive practices. It's difficult. I mean, I'm a Caucasian male from up the hill, 25 minutes away. I grew up in a neighborhood that was 99% white, suburban male, and it is different. It's people are like, oh, you're going to work down in Newark? And I was like, yeah, I want to work in Newark. That's where I want to work. And a lot of like I said, my experience has led me here. I know that I can have impact here. And I know I may look different from a lot of our students. I'm not Latino, but they see that I've gone out of my way and I've dedicated my life to learn Spanish, to learn about them and show them that I love them and that I want to know more about them. And when teachers can do that, when educators do that, it really sets the stage for success. And we want in the classroom, in the high school level, you want a rigorous curriculum. You want students to be doing college level work in high school. So you want to be able to ensure you're providing them a voice. How do you do that? It's a lot of collaborative learning. And in order to do collaborative learning and get students to feel comfortable about speaking about difficult topics like race and how maybe their own race and their ethnicity has impacted what they believe about themselves or what they think about the world, is you have to take the first week or two of the school year and do things like icebreakers to get to know the students. Find a way to build a student-friendly environment so that these conversations can take place. And using supports like universal design, and one of the other great, I don't think I put it in my presentation, I just thought of it now, is the sheltered observation protocol, sheltered instruction for bilingual learners. All students, every student comes in with experience, comes into the classroom with some type of experience that can be used to engage students in the learning. We need to know how to do that. It takes practice. Sheltered instruction observation protocol is a research-based teaching strategy that has 8 basic principles, and it starts with lesson design. A lot of the tailoring instruction, as Mr. Enriquez mentioned, this is a lot of work at the planning level for the teacher. If you want to be successful with your students, you need to plan. It's all about lesson planning and tailoring instruction and using things like sheltered instruction. So that's like, it's not just having a learning objective. What is the learning objective for today? They have a language objective. So I was a bilingual social studies teacher. I had to teach my students about social studies, history, but I also had to teach them English at the same time. So that language objective was the key component of how I am going to implicitly teach English on a daily basis. My first couple years, I stuck mostly with Spanish, and I realized, I need to do more with English. I need to push the students. It's so key to always have high expectations, because when you have the highest of expectations and you push them with love and support and you build confidence, you will be surprised what students can do. They will almost always go beyond what your beliefs are, and that's how my beliefs changed a lot over the years. I've had to deal with my own beliefs about race, students, and expectations for a while. And I'm constantly evolving and constantly learning. It's never you don't stop learning, ever. The next slide, please. Culturally responsive teaching is one of the key terms that I wanted to focus on. And students need to see themselves in the curriculum. Students need to see themselves in the lessons. They need to understand that they should be reflected. The books that they are reading, the selections of the books that they're reading should include where they're coming from, Latino, African American, wherever it is, they should be part of that discussion. Culturally responsive teaching is also a research-based approach. It connects students' cultures, their languages, and life experiences. And it helps raise expectations for students. They find themselves that if they're able to build that connection, making a connection develops the brain, right? And that's how you start to fly when it comes to learning. That's how it clicked for me. Once I was able to start making connections from one thing to another, there's actual things happening physically in your brain with synapses, and your brain is getting stronger and more powerful. The next slide. So let's see if Stephanie's up here. Stephanie, is that your class? So at Eastside High School, we have an early college program that students in the 10th grade, they apply an interview to be in a college program. So they take full-time college courses, and they take their high school courses at the same time. And if they pass all of them, they graduate with an associate's degree from Essex County College. So we've been doing this since 2012, and Mr. West and Mr. Enrique has been part of this program for a long time. They tell you students in high school can't do this. Students in high school can't do this. They did it. They have been doing it. And then we're like, well, why don't we have cohorts for our bilingual students? And so we created in 2018 the first cohort of bilingual students for Spanish. Oh, why not Portuguese? So a couple years later, we did Portuguese, and it's working. Last year, we had 67 students graduate Eastside High School with an associate's degree. Stephanie, stand up. Stand up, Steph. Steph. Let's hear it for Steph. That's one of them. And she was a bilingual student, and we pushed her, and she did it. And we even have students that have IEPs in this program, and the main thing, the expectation is there, right? You have to have the expectation that they can do this. And when so many people in society are telling them they're not going to be able to do this, someone in the building has to have that expectation, and there has to be constant follow-up, because it's hard. It's a lot of work. It's not like I just put them in the program and I let it go. I'm constantly yelling at them and finding them and figuring out who didn't do what and chasing after them. That's what it takes to prevent anyone from failing. And we have continued student success. I remember we have a organization called the Student Leadership Council, where we give certificates and medals to students that make the honor roll and super honor roll. First time we did it, I remember it was like 2008 or 2009, one of my first years teaching. We had like 20 students in the room. Now, on a consistent basis, we have 400 students with super honor roll. That's like all A's, and 700 to 800, maybe even 900 students that have honor roll, super honor roll, or honorable mention, which for those of you who don't know what that means, it means they have very good grades, all A's and B's, let's say, and we make sure that we celebrate their achievements. Next slide. Another way to make sure students feel welcomed is to make sure you have cultural events. Bring the community together and support the cultures that are in the school. Have the whole school talking about it. We have every year an annual Heritage Pride Day, April 20th, 12 o'clock, Eastside High School. Heritage Pride Day, free food for everyone, April 20th. It's going to be free. It's going to be great. We're going to have students dancing. I don't know if I'm going to dress up in a kilt again, but I'm Irish and Scottish, so I dress up in a kilt. I don't know if I'm going to do that again, but I did this time. These events, they're a lot of work to make happen, but every time they do happen, it makes the community happy, it makes the students happy, it makes the parents happy. It's a really great way to celebrate diversity, and that's important because that builds tolerance and love, and we need to accept everyone for who they are. And it's amazing how much we find the more we have in common. When we do events like this, for human beings, we realize, wow, we have more in common than we have that's different. And the different aspects that we have are the beautiful aspects, like the different dances, the different foods, and different dresses. Those are the things that we should celebrate, are the differences, right? Next slide. Is that it? So, one last thing. This is building trust with students is super important. Relationships is one of the most important things for an educator, with a teacher and their students. And when I came out of the classroom 8 years ago to be administrator, I was like, oh, I'm not going to really be able to have contact with students and develop those relationships. And that was one of the things that I thought I would never be an administrator because of that, because I love getting to know students. but it's important for every adult in the building to make sure that they have what I like to call touch points with students that are outside of the classroom. And it could be something as, oh, I see Johnny in the hall. I know Johnny was having a trouble with Miss So-and-so's class, but he's just overcome that and did something well. I stop him and I talk to him and I congratulate him on that. Or a student that really likes the same sports team as me. Or I need to carry 1,000 books from one part of the building to another part of the building, and none of the elevators work, so I'm going to get 20 students to help me. And believe it or not, although they're doing work, they love that interaction with another adult in the building that helps build trust and show them they're important. It's a tremendous impact on their well-being and their importance and the reason for being in school. It shouldn't just always be, all right, here in the class, this is it, come to class. Find ways for your adults to make sure that they're having these individual or small group interactions with students and showing them that they care, because that's really the essential part. So just to close, again, lead with love, teach with love, and care about your students, and that's the foundation to build a school environment or a classroom environment that has inclusive practices and equity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Donovan, for your shared experience and for your love of teaching. It really touched all of us. So now we receive 2 questions from the audience, and I will read them. And you can each have about 2 minutes to answer the questions or so. All right, so the first question is, in your vision, what is the greatest challenge of today in inclusive education? And what does it take to be an inclusive teacher? You each have about 2 minutes, whoever wants to start first. Mr. Hicks? Okay. Just use the microphone, please. Thank you.
I mean, I could definitely start with question number 2, right? So I did touch upon it even in my presentation. What does it take? It's really a teacher that has to be empathetic. You know, it has to come from within, really employing all strategies with the fidelity that I've stated, knowing the students that you teach, knowing the community that you work in. Of course, the resources always need to be there as well, as I've stated before, but then making sure that we're using the resources correctly as well. Mr. Donovan finished his presentation like that as well, right? His experience on how he put himself in the shoes of his students in this community. And his experience, he spoke about his experience studying abroad, but then really working in Newark, and it really took him wanting to become a better teacher and really empathizing with his students in the community that he works in to make sure that he's servicing the students to meet all of their needs. And that's ongoing, right? Because our communities change and our students change. So number 1, I'm going to say empathy and resources, of course. And the greatest challenge, I'm going to kind of say, the greatest challenge is that as an administrator to make sure I have 100% inclusive classrooms is, of course, teacher experience, because a teacher might have the empathy and the fidelity, but they also need to grow as an educator, and that comes with all the support that teacher needs, the support that the school needs as well. So professional development for all staff members, and then of course the push from the community to make sure that the school that their children attend has the resources again, but again, the correct PD, professional development, know-how. But it really does take a village, as you know, we often hear that sentence, that term. But with that, my thoughts just evolved, right? So right now, it really is the lack of knowledge amongst parents and families what inclusive education is. So they could press their own schools, their own communities, and politicians, you know, on how the laws are created and so forth to make sure that schools are really inclusive. My challenge as a principal is to bringing more parents into the school because we've tried virtual PTO meetings, we try in person, we try different hours, and the engagement seems to be rather low, regardless of the age group of the children. So, of course, when it's to celebrate something, people do come in, but again, it's that daily work that parents just feel overworked many times, and especially when we're talking about children that do need to be included, whether it's an IEP, whether it's socioeconomic status, racial, those parents already have such a busy schedule. So you kind of feel yourself like you're rowing against the current sometimes, but really all of these challenges kind of intertwine. So it's not just one particular challenge. It's about 3 or 4 challenges in one. But again, with the right staff and human resources, everybody really focused. It's our ongoing daily struggle, but continuing to move in the right direction, though.
So I think both of you touch upon an important aspect of the profession, which is love, right? You need to love to teach. You need to love children. You need to see them as human beings. They're little human beings, but they are human beings. We, like us, they all have their specific needs. They have their life stories. They have their home life. We don't know what happens at home when they come to us at 8:30 in the morning, and how that can set their mood for the day. So working, and Mr. Weeks also talked about parent involvement. Besides a contract with the public schools, we also have a contract with the federal government through a Head Start program. We are a Head Start grantee, and Head Start puts a lot of efforts into parent engagement, parent involvement, parent empowerment. And I'm proud to say that many of our teachers today used to be parents. They start as parents, they start volunteering, they went back to school, they got an associate degree, they become assistant teachers, they go back to school, they got their bachelor's and their certification, and they are teachers, and they've been with us for over 20 years. Many of them were there already when I was there, when I was hired, and I'm proud of that. And one of the reasons why we have been able to actually hire more staff, I talked about staff shortage. We lose a lot of teachers to the newer public schools, unfortunately, but the reason why we are able to have been maintaining our faculty as needed is because we cultivate our parents. We empower them to go back to school. We pay for CDA courses if it's needed. We find them scholarships, tuitions, so they can go back to school. And while they are going to school, they're working with us. They're learning as it goes, right? They're part of our professional development and all of that. But my biggest challenge remain the fact that, yes, we have a large number of children with special needs and shortage of professionals that are equipped to provide them with the services they need. So that stretches our teaching staff thin, and those other professionals thin also. That's causing burnouts, and I really hope they take a deep breath every day. We are working a lot with mental health and helping our teachers to overcome those stressors so they remain in the profession. Thank you.
Similar to what they both just said, I mean, it really comes down to time, because one of the most important things that it's really hard to get time to do on a consistent basis is have really good professional development with your staff. There's in an academic school year, we have 4 staff development days, 5 staff development days, and during these staff development days, those teachers are pulled from the school to central office to work on things that are going on in that content area, which is great, and I'm glad they're able to do that. But we also need time to work with our teachers together in the school and be together, and not just on academic things, but as she mentioned, our teachers also struggle with social emotional issues because it's overwhelming. Many of our teachers that we've hired over the past 2 years are not traditionally trained like I was. They didn't do student teaching in college. They didn't take education courses in college, and they may be coming from another business or another career, and they're now just getting to teaching for the first time, and they've never been trained or taught how to teach. And there's a lot that you need to learn in order to teach. Like, yes, I talked about love and caring about the students and empathy. That's a great foundation, but there's a lot more to it than just that. It's a great foundation. It's one of the most important foundations to have an inclusive and a school with a environment that embraces equity. But to have just like a mentor assigned to them isn't even enough. And for such a large school where some of our department chairpersons that lead departments, they have 15 to 25 teachers that they have to coach. And we have in our social studies department, I think 28 teachers. Ms. Fernandez is one of our new teachers and one of 8 first-year teachers in that department. 7 or 8 first-year teachers in that department. Many of them are bilingual teachers, which is double training. You need to learn how to teach and then teach bilingual, right? I had to go back to school to get a bilingual education certificate, and 5 to 6 teachers in their second year. So half the department is provisional new teachers that are still developing. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing until 3 or 4 years into teaching. I didn't know anything. People are like, "You're doing a great job." I'm like, "Really? I don't know." But I guess that goes down to the point of like, I cared, and they saw that. And what's the other question?
What is the greatest challenge of today inclusive education?
So the greatest challenge, just to summarize, is to find time and ways to consistently train teachers and new teachers, and then, well, I think it's important that you have a staff that embraces. That's why the title of my presentation was Embracing Inclusive Practice. The word embracing implies that you support something enthusiastically and willingly. So for all staff members to support inclusive practices and equity is one of the most important things.
Yeah, I was gonna, go ahead.
So, as I sit here thinking, right, but globally, I'm going to say, because as we watch the news, different countries, right, I watch obviously news from Portugal daily, and I follow BBC as well. But really, it's the lack of support for the education profession, right? That's changed. I think that's the biggest, I'm going to say that's the biggest challenge that government officials are really not listening to, and they're not supporting the profession. And they're, they should put aside political differences, because this is the most important profession in any nation, any nation in the world, right? And education gets caught up in political nonsense, because that's exactly the word, and they should put aside their differences and really promote the most important profession in any nation, which is education. It's the foundation for society. And again, from whether it's the 3-year-old child, whether it's a 2-year-old child, all the way to making sure that we're developing real-world citizens, right? And making sure that everybody, we spoke about, inclusive practices today, but really for everyone, because it is for everyone, but not just those children that fall under protected classes or socioeconomic, because of socioeconomic needs or race or gender, or students that need IEPs. But really, the lack of support for it in the education system. Because as we see it and we watch the news, unqualified people leading ministries of education, whether it's in the US, whether it's in different countries, and they make the laws without, and I said it in my presentation, laws are being made without input from educators. And again, then most people in the community, of course, do not follow politics properly. They don't like, people don't watch enough or read enough, unfortunately, to make the real informed decisions. And therefore, I've seen a decline really in the confidence in educators because of lack of information and political decisions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so very much. One more.
Just
Yes. Mm-hmm.
yeah. I think also is important that us, the leaders of school, right, talk the talk and walk the walk, and actually walk the talk, right? Teachers need to see that we see equity also as an important aspect of education, that we treat them with respect, that we greet parents every day in the morning. And I have to say that Mr. Enriquez was my mentor during my master's degree course. And one day I was there in Oliver Street School observing, I was walking with him through the hallways towards the end of the school day. I was going to observe a staff meeting. And on the way to his office to where the staff meeting was going to take place, he stopped several times to greet children. Children came to him to talk to him, to show about accomplishment they have made. He stopped to talk to parents. Okay, so that's what the teachers want to see as well. We are the face of the school. We have to lead by example.
Thank you very much to our distinguished speakers in this roundtable, Ms. Blanco, Mr. Enrique, and Mr. Donovan, with their perspectives on inclusive education in the various age groups. You may take your seats, please. Thank you. And to close our presentation today, I now invite Dr. Maria Sueli Periotto. She holds a doctorate and master's degree in education from the Pontifícia Universidade Católica de São Paulo. She is a pedagogue, the LGW's educational superintendent and supervisor of the pedagogical line applied in the Legion of Goodwill schools. She will talk about her experience in the LGW Schools Network with the theme, Inclusive Education and the LGW's Boosting Skills Program, A View Beyond the Intellect. She traveled all the way from Brazil to be with us today. Her presentation will be in Portuguese with consecutive translation done by Mr. Danilo Parmegiani. You may have a seat, please.
Olá, hello, buenos dias, isso. Somos todos incluídos e incluímos.
We are all included, and we also include in this salutation in three languages.
Eu sou hoje fruto da inclusão pelo tradutor, que acompanhei todo aqui o momento. Também alguns, né, se identificam.
So today she felt included using technology because she's using an app on her device to help her understand all the wonderful presentations today.
É um prazer essa edição do Congresso de Educação da LBV, um congresso internacional, acontecer neste momento.
It is a great pleasure to see that this Congress is happening at this very moment in history.
E aprendemos muito já nessa manhã.
And we have
Sim?
learned.
Yes? Sim.
And we have learned a lot this morning.
Congratulations, Miss Clark, Miss Grace,
Mr.
Miss Donovan, Miss Henrique.
Mr.
Henrique. Oh, perdão. Scott, Dr. Scott. Quando ouvimos uns aos outros, estamos quebrando as nossas barreiras também de inclusão.
When we listen to one another, we are also breaking the barriers of inclusion.
Porque aprendemos sempre.
Because we are learning always.
Não posso dizer, não vou a um congresso, já estudei. Já cheguei longe.
So we should avoid saying, I'm not going to this Congress because I already have gone so far.
E valorizamos os títulos. São importantes.
And we value all the titles that we achieved.
Fruto de estudo.
Results of all the studies that we performed.
Mas não podemos parar.
But we cannot stop.
Hoje foi um rico aprendizado, eu tenho certeza, para todos.
Today she's sure that was a very enriching learning process so far.
Viajamos em 4 universos.
We traveled through 4 different universes.
Não somos mais os mesmos.
We are no longer the same anymore.
Com certeza.
For sure.
Bem, das palestras que eu ouvi hoje, achei muito interessante como nós falamos sobre a educação inclusiva que acontece, em geral, em todas as escolas, na nossa vida.
From the perspectives presented today, she learned a lot from the different ways we are implementing this inclusiveness approach across different places.
E eu vou trazer como foco do meu momento as questões dos diagnósticos dos estudantes e como as escolas da LBV trabalham com essas crianças, adolescentes e jovens.
And her presentation will be focused in bringing all the different challenges according to the diverse diagnosis that the School of the Legion of Goodwill in São Paulo perceives and how they deal with these challenges.
Todas as nossas escolas têm crianças já diagnosticadas e elas precisam de um acompanhamento, como ouvi muito aqui hoje, individualizado.
And in all our schools of the Legion of Goodwill, we have identified many children with diagnosis, and they need and they require this kind of individualized approach to achieve the learning goals.
E o motivo de não podermos parar de estudar é que, mesmo que tenhamos... vou recolocar. O motivo da gente não parar de estudar é que, tendo, por exemplo, numa sala, 3 estudantes com o mesmo diagnóstico, os 3 não serão iguais, não farão as mesmas coisas, não terão da nossa parte o mesmo suporte. É necessário um suporte diferenciado para cada um desses indivíduos.
And the reason why we should never stop studying and developing is that if you are having in your classroom 3 children with the very same diagnosis, it will never be the same approach to all of them. And this requires the teacher to adapt and understand the differences and bring individualized approach to every case.
Eu não sou uma especialista em educação inclusiva, então eu sei que muitos aqui sabem muito mais do que eu. No entanto, eu venho relatar como acontece, venho compartilhar o nosso programa de inclusão, ok?
So she's speaking not as a specialist in inclusive education, but as a practitioner, and also speak about this program of the Legion of Goodwill that is implemented in different schools not only in Brazil but across the world. And I must add that I'm not also a specialist, so be careful with my translation. Please, specialists, help me out here using the right terms from now on, okay?
Muito bem. O trabalho do professor na sala de aula é muitas vezes solitário.
The job of a teacher in the classroom is usually very solitaire, right? It's very lonely.
Mas nós já sabíamos disso.
But we already knew that, right?
Não sabíamos que seriam tantos desafios sozinhos, mas nós já sabíamos que eles viriam.
We didn't know that the challenges were that big, but we knew that would be a challenge to overcome.
E os pais também se sentem solitários.
And parents also feel lonely.
Os estudantes também.
And the students too.
Há uma emoção porque eles nos olham, não sabem por que estão ali na sala de aula.
She's moved because when they look at them, at the teachers or at her, they don't really know what they are doing inside the classroom.
Uma sala fechada,
It's a closed classroom,
sem minha família,
away from parents and family,
pessoas dizendo coisas que eu não entendo.
people speaking about things that I don't understand.
É isso.
That's it.
Bem, a linha educacional da Legião da Boa Vontade, vocês começam a ver agora algumas telas, é formada pela pedagogia do afeto.
So the educational line of the Legion of Goodwill, as you can see in the screen, is formed by the pedagogy of affection
E pela pedagogia do cidadão ecumênico.
and also by the ecumenical citizen pedagogy.
A primeira abrange crianças até 10 anos de idade.
The first embraces children up to 10 years old,
E a pedagogia do cidadão ecumênico a partir de 11 anos.
and the second from 11 years old onwards.
A proposta dessa pedagogia é de José de Paiva Netto. E nesse livro, É Urgente Reeducar, ele nos fala que é preciso uma visão além do intelecto.
So this is a proposal created by the educator Paiva Netto when he says it's urgent to re-educate, and he talks about a view beyond the intellect.
E ele fala que o bom gosto da vida é o aprendizado infinito.
His quote is, "The beauty of life is endless learning."
E que não seja só para nós, que seja também para os alunos, os estudantes.
And
né?
may this truth not just be for us as educators, but also for the students.
Isso. Ele fala que é preciso uma visão além do intelecto, ou seja, que toda formação intelectual ela é necessária, mas ela não pode vir sozinha.
So he's saying that it is required a view beyond the intellect, because he says that all formations are required and necessary, but it could not just stop there.
E aí ele nos fala de uma integralidade de cada um de nós, né? Então, o nosso cognitivo, o nosso racional, o sentimento e a questão da espiritualidade. Essa espiritualidade que nós vamos falar aqui.
So he talks about an integral development, a whole development of human beings, incorporating also the cognitive aspects, the feelings, and spirituality.
De modo que uma criança, um estudante com diagnóstico, ele se sinta tão bem que ele sinta que ele pode ajudar, ser solidário com o outro que está do seu lado.
In such a way that even a child with diagnosis, this child will feel so well that it will not just overcome his or her challenges, but it will be inspired to also help other children, their peers in the classroom.
Claro que a perspectivas de ir além do intelecto, nos fala de não ficar presos aos diagnósticos, mas é claro que não podemos ignorá-los.
So this perspective proposes we never get stuck or limited by the diagnosis, but also we need to acknowledge them.
Precisamos lembrar dos diagnósticos para termos sempre novas estratégias.
So the diagnoses are there to help us find new strategies in the classroom.
Mas não posso olhar para o meu aluno e vê-lo no diagnóstico, mas ver que ele possui um diagnóstico. Ele não é o diagnóstico, ele é um indivíduo.
But we shall never look at a child and see a diagnosis, but we have to understand that it may have a diagnosis, but we have to always look at this as a person, as an individual.
Então vamos mapeá-los, não sei se essa palavra atende, mas vamos mapeá-los individualmente, mesmo aqueles que têm o mesmo diagnóstico, individualmente serão por nós mapeados.
So the goal is to map individually each and every individual, meaning we have to screen them and understand them deeply in what they need.
A mesma estratégia, ela não atende 3 crianças com o mesmo diagnóstico.
So the same strategy is not the same for 3 children with the same diagnosis. It's not just one size fits all.
Podemos dar sorte,
We may be lucky,
mas vai ser sorte.
but it will be just luck.
Não é nem o respeito, não é o respeito que nós queremos ter por todos eles. Então,
It's not just the respect we have to have with them.
temos estudantes que não conseguem entender 5 linhas de um enunciado, de um problema ou de uma questão.
So there are children that could not even understand reading just 5 lines of just one paragraph
Quando leem.
when they are reading.
Então, fazemos avaliações com as provas, as questões gravadas. Ouvem pergunta número 1 e a professora faz a leitura dessa pergunta.
So they record the questions in a recording device so they can listen to the questions, so they can understand through the listening skills and not just by the reading.
Temos alguns alunos que são avaliados de forma oral. O canal auditivo não é o que chega no conhecimento que eles têm e na verbalização eles conseguem responder as questões.
So they are evaluated not just by one channel, and sometimes they even assess this through the responses to these audio messages.
Muitas vezes um enunciado horizontal de muitas linhas não é lido, então fazemos colunas verticais que enganam o cérebro.
So sometimes they are creating strategies to deceive the brain, because if they are not able to read sentences in a regular horizontal way, they create columns where the information will be broken down in a way that this would access their understanding.
E aí vem a espiritualidade, que é a proposta da educação da LBV.
And here comes this perspective, which is spirituality, proposed by the Legion of Goodwill.
Não está exatamente nessa diversificação de estratégias, o que é muito bom.
And this is not just about diversifying the strategies, which is already very good and necessary.
Está nele perceber que eu me importo com ele.
It is in the fact that the children will understand and perceive that we care about him or her.
Às vezes ele gosta, sabemos, de um carrinho, de um desenho, de alguma coisa, de um brinquedo, por exemplo.
Sometimes the child manifests that they like a certain game or a certain toy.
Então, sou a professora e vou colocar na avaliação algum objeto que ele tem afinidade.
So as a teacher, I must incorporate this object or this aspect in to my lesson plan.
Só para ele.
Just
Aquele
for him
objeto
or
é
her.
dele. Aquela marca na prova é dele.
So that specific item in the test or that object that was incorporated into the lesson plan belongs to him or her individually.
Faço a gravação e digo: Sandra, lembra que na minha aula eu falei sobre esse assunto?
So the teacher records the audio specifically to that child. Sandra, do you remember of that aspect during our classroom?
Agora, responda.
Now answer.
Bom, quando a gente fala dessa atenção individual, estamos numa contramão do mundo atual.
So when we are talking about that individualized attention, we are actually we're going against the wave, right, of what is natural in this world.
A postura empática, colaborativa, que queremos entre todos, e tempos midiáticos, se quiser fazer a leitura de propostas, né, que são realmente individualistas.
So she's talking about the empathy and that attitude of full citizenship versus this media-centered times of individualistic proposals.
Quando vamos desenvolvendo o afeto que eles possuem, dando-lhes esse afeto, eles também devolvem para aqueles com os quais eles convivem. Ficam menos fechados, menos agressivos.
So it is the first action of the teacher to show this affection and to show they care, so they can also perceive this and repeat the same attitudes at home with parents.
Chamamos de saber solidário.
So they call it the solidary knowledge.
Mostra para o outro o que sabe fazer melhor.
One show the other what they do best.
Alguns são muito bons na matemática, nas exatas.
Some are really good at mathematics
E
or
não
science
são bons nos esportes.
and not so good in sports.
Então eles trocam.
So they exchange.
E a gente vai tentando fazer sempre essa movimentação de conversar com o outro.
And it's intentionally to make that kind of interaction and move inside the classroom.
Chamamos de grupos de monitoria.
We call it monitoring groups,
Eles gostam muito.
and they love it.
E, como o professor precisa de... Não sei se usam aqui o termo coordenação de professores, qual é o termo usado?
So as the teachers need the supervisor or coordination,
Sim.
coaching, yes, thank you.
Esse coordenador, ele também, geralmente, não é especialista no que estamos falando aqui dos diagnósticos.
Usually this program coordinator is not a specialist either.
Ele coordena planejamentos,
Usually this coordinator makes planning,
avaliações,
evaluations,
o currículo, a matriz curricular,
curriculum.
mas sentimos que é necessário ter profissional especialista
But they felt the need to actually assign one professional inside the class, the school. There is a specialist
que trabalha com o coordenador
to work with this program coordinator
para abraçar os professores e ajudá-los.
to help the teachers.
Então, sou uma coordenadora, vou ouvir um professor e vou levar junto a minha coordenadora de educação inclusiva.
So as a program coordinator, I'm going to also invite the specialist in inclusion to help the teachers to do their plannings.
A parte pedagógica da matriz curricular, essa pessoa está do lado, observando quais as adaptações serão necessárias de acontecer no planejamento.
So while they're doing their lesson plans, there is a specialist also helping the coordinator to analyze what adjustments are required to achieve their learning goals.
A visão da coordenadora é garantir o planejamento com os conteúdos, a matriz curricular.
So the program coordinator has a clear goal to make sure that the learning goals are achieved according to the curriculum.
E essa professora, que é especialista, ela fica observando onde ela precisa ajudar o professor a fazer adaptações no dia a dia, não só em avaliações, mas no dia a dia.
And then the specialist is always monitoring in what parts she needs to intervene and help this program to really remove the barriers in order to achieve these goals, helping the teachers with their children, with their students.
É aí que entra o programa LBV, Potencializando Habilidades.
So this was when this program was created, which is the program is boosting
Pode voltar uma tela, Nicolas,
the
por favor.
LGW's
Mais uma.
program Boosting Skills. That's the name of the program.
Para a educação infantil, uma professora da educação inclusiva para coordenar os professores.
So for early childhood education, she has one coordinator.
Lá, nosso ensino fundamental é do 1º ao 5º ano, de 6 a 11 anos. Uma outra professora que coordena esses professores.
So from the age group from 1 through 5th grade, she has another coordinator.
E chamamos de ensino fundamental do 6º ao 9º ano, e depois de ensino médio, 1ª, 2ª e 3ª série. Então, seria de 14, 13, 12 a 17 anos, uma outra coordenadora.
And then
Okay.
the second elementary
A
phase,
divisão
right?
deve ser um pouquinho diferente, mas
It's from 5 through 9
acho
in
que
Brazil.
deu para entender, né? Muito bem. Nós mapeamos, fizemos uma amostra e temos 200 diagnósticos iniciais para que vocês consigam, talvez, não sei se percebem tanto.
So in this graph, we are seeing that in a recent in a recent research, they found out 200 cases with diagnosis hypothesis or diagnosis in her school.
Sim. Esses são já alunos, são estudantes que recebem diretamente o apoio desse programa.
So
Estamos falando de São Paulo 1.500, Rio 700 e as demais com 200 cada. Talvez fale que é uma amostra.
So from like a universe of about 2,500 students, so this would be the results of that research, showing that 200 would show diagnostic hypothesis or confirmed diagnosis.
23% desse número, 76 alunos, tem o transtorno do déficit de atenção. Não sei se vocês aqui também chamam assim, né? E a hiperatividade,
Attention deficit.
TDAH, talvez a
Yes.
letra mude um pouquinho, né?
HDAD. HDAD. So 23% of the entire universe would show HDAD.
16%, 54 alunos, o transtorno do espectro autista.
16% under the autism spectrum disorder,
Com os seus níveis de suporte diferenciados.
with their different levels, right?
E depois, não sei se chamam TOD, TOD não, o TAC, que é o transtorno de processamento auditivo, tem sido crescente, os diagnósticos são 31, mas também, Danilo, acho que daqui
Ok.
dá para ver as frações, né? E esses, então, estão mapeados, estão diagnosticados, mas muitos à espera de um diagnóstico.
So she's showing actually the prevalency of all the diagnoses found out in this research, citing these 3 main ones, but she's saying that these are the ones who were already diagnosed, but there's a long list of children that are still yet to be confirmed.
Além do trabalho na escola, então nós temos o suporte externo de profissionais. certo?
So beyond the work that they do inside the school with their own professionals, they also count with external consultants and supporters.
Sim, porque não clinicamos, né?
Because the school will not give clinical diagnosis.
Mas temos, como vocês, recursos. Pode voltar, Nicolas. Recursos apoiadores. Então, esses 172 estudantes já têm, no seu mapeamento, esses recursos à sua disposição.
And when they are diagnosed, there's also a system where they receive supporting staff and supporting resources to the different cases showed here.
No dia a dia, muitos são os atendimentos que vocês também sabem, só quis colocar para que a gente, talvez vocês, não sei se já mapearam nas suas escolas, mas é muita coisa que é feita, ainda bem, né? É bem diversificado o atendimento.
So on the daily basis, you might also have this in your schools, but this is just to showcase the type of specialized assistance that is required to be implemented to assist and give access to the children that were diagnosed in the other screen.
Esta é a nossa engrenagem de funcionamento.
So this is how the engine of this program works.
Temos, então, o serviço social,
So they have social workers,
o posto de enfermagem,
the medical staff,
a nutricionista,
nutritionists,
as coordenadoras pedagógicas bilíngue e de esporte,
the pedagogical coordinators, and also the
o
sports
próprio programa PPH,
and bilingual,
potencializando habilidades,
the program itself that is here,
a direção escolar,
the school administration,
professores, os psicólogos
teachers and psychologists,
e a educação, a orientação educacional.
and then the educational orientation.
Pelo que também percebi, fazem isso, nós temos, então, os chamados estudo de casos, né? Cada estudante é levado para uma reunião separada, o seu caso, para um estudo.
So, and also, as you might know, there's also the case studies of each situation. When they come together, they have a meeting specifically to study that case
Antes do diagnóstico.
before the diagnosis is confirmed.
Porque nós não diagnosticamos, mas nós percebemos que há alguma coisa acontecendo.
Because they are not the doctors to confirm diagnosis, but the teachers are the first ones to perceive and understand what's going on.
Então, os profissionais que vocês viram no quadro anterior, eles vão assistindo a aula, observando no pátio, reunindo recursos para que chamemos a família ou não para o próximo passo, que é procurar um profissional que vai fazer o diagnóstico.
So these observations are not just made inside the classroom, but also outside in their playgrounds and in their interactions. So they can come together in these meetings and put this into a report to provide to parents.
Então, é assim que se dá esse processo de inserção.
So this is the beginning of this process of inclusion.
Os passos desse programa, eles são os mesmos sempre. Os locais são diferentes para onde eles vão e ficam, então, os profissionais comprometidos em dar um suporte a esse estudante até que chegue o diagnóstico.
So the steps are always the same, and then they have the commitment of all the different staff members of that engine until this conclusion is achieved.
É muito interessante a gente falar isso, porque eu sei que aqui, nos Estados Unidos, já é muito forte esse movimento. Não é no Brasil.
So she is talking about this as a very innovative approach, because in Brazil, here in the United States, this seems to be more common and actually is part of the public policies present and present everywhere. But in Brazil, this is a totally new approach, and it's quite different. And not to mention that for the Legion of Goodwill, this is done and supported by donations that we have to raise to finance all this structure.
Eu percebo que já há uma sistematização aqui de cada criança, o caminho a ser trilhado. Não é a realidade de lá. Muitas escolas não sabem como receber esses alunos e como vão partir para esse estudo que nós, afinal, sistematizamos do nosso jeito e agora compartilhamos lá com outras escolas.
So she understands.
Sim.
Yes.
Yes.
In regards to the clinical professionals that you're talking about that come to do, I can ask the question in Portuguese. Em relação a esses profissionais que são específicos ou treinados para promover um diagnóstico, eles são contratados pela escola ou pelo Estado? Como funciona isso?
The question was if the medical staff is hired or if they're coming from outside the school.
Não são da escola. Não temos nenhum profissional médico ou psicólogo ou psiquiatra ou fonoaudiólogo dentro da escola. Quando nós observamos que sim, há alguma coisa, temos uma hipótese, fazemos então, chamamos a família então é acionada para procurar um especialista que a gente sempre ajuda a encontrar, para que, sim, eles façam um diagnóstico. E o aluno traz para a escola o diagnóstico, você depois vai. E nós conversamos depois por relatórios com esses profissionais externos.
Eu gostaria de clarificar que aqui, na verdade, o sistema é similar com esse sistema que você está descrevendo. Nós temos, sim, o Child Study Team, que são profissionais como social workers, psicólogos, que podem, sim, observar a criança, ou até fonoaudiólogos, para ver as dificuldades que a criança tem nessas áreas de desenvolvimento, mas o diagnóstico não é dado por eles, a menos que esse grupo de profissionais exija que seja feito um diagnóstico neurológico, por exemplo. Mas isso não faz parte. I'm not sure if that's wrong, if it's part of the K-12, but it's not part of my reality.
So the discussion here, very quickly summarizing, the question was if the medical staff would be part of the school staff, and the answer was no. We in Brazil, the Legion of Goodwill counts with a referral system. Sometimes even they are volunteers, medical staff that come to the school in support. And also she, Grace, explained that actually these are not that different here, because also in the schools they would also not have that diagnosis done inside the school.
O que é importante é isso. Uma escola não pode diagnosticar.
Yes, a school cannot provide diagnosis.
O nosso psicólogo, por exemplo, ele não diagnostica. O que ele faz? Nós pedimos que ele observe, que ele atue para minorizar a agressividade, os comportamentos antes do diagnóstico.
So like the psychologist that works in the school, he's not there to provide the diagnosis, but to observe the behavior and address it in a way to prevent this from scaling up.
E esse é um grande problema, porque temos um tempo de espera até a chegada do diagnóstico.
And this is a big issue, because there is a long time until that child will reach the diagnosis.
Enquanto isso, os nossos professores, heroicamente, vão atenuando situações que acontecem.
In the meantime, the teachers are the ones that need to mitigate and navigate through this challenging moment until this confirmation becomes a diagnosis.
Ok? Sim, ok. Temos ações com as crianças e com os adolescentes em projetos trimestrais, que são os projetos de intervenção para comportamento e interação social. Nesses projetos, nós procuramos fazer grupos exatamente de professores que possam trabalhar com estes diagnósticos e com as ações que já deram certo dentro da sala.
Yeah, okay, so she's talking about these projects. They are prepared and planned to be quarterly, and then they come with these interventions to support with the behavior and social interactions.
As ações para isso da escola, planejamento colaborativo. Então, não temos como fazer um planejamento só com o professor, só com o coordenador de inclusão, todos. Está junto ali o psicólogo, todas aquelas áreas que nós vimos na engrenagem.
So the collaborative planning incorporates all those areas that were before talked about in that engine before.
Dei um resumo agora nessa tela, que a realização de sondagem, aí você pode acompanhar a próxima, Danilo, seria melhor. Eu vou fazer essa leitura e você vai, eu acho que ajuda, tá bem? Temos, então, uma realização de sondagem de habilidades, observações em sala de aula, entrevista com os professores, para que tenhamos essa visão, estabelecimento de objetivos e metas por período, curto e longo prazo. Acho que tá
Okay, so these are the target audience, right? So conducting skill assessments, classroom observations, an interview with teachers, establishing objectives for each period, quarter, semester, short, medium, long term.
Isso. E, uma vez por semana, pelo menos, temos estratégias diversificadas com jogos para cada aluno que possui um diagnóstico. Pelo menos uma vez por semana, ele vai ter esse momento.
So at least once a week, they have an interaction with the child utilizing games. So at least once a week, and through the games, they assess the child and their needs.
Que não é aquele atendimento que todas as crianças com diagnóstico possuem, que fazemos relatórios, lá chamamos AEE, atendimento especializado educacional, né? Então aquele pela lei, ele é feito diariamente com reforço ao conteúdo.
So she's talking about that this intervention is not even the support that this child will receive with the individualized system, but it's a way that they use to still assess using games as a way to understand the child's need.
Então, ele tem um professor que vai trabalhar com ele para reforçar os conteúdos, por exemplo, todos os dias, o conteúdo que ele teve de manhã, no período da tarde.
So they will have like a supplemental support in the after school hours.
Isso por conta da lei. O nosso programa, ele faz mais, ele busca trazer para as crianças atividades pessoais, individuais, lúdicas.
So this is to respond to the legislation requirements, but the program goes beyond by also engaging the children in their individualized needs, utilizing games and ways to make them learn by playing.
Vamos ajudá-lo a montar, por exemplo, e já mostrarei, um calendário, uma agenda diária.
So they create like a daily schedule for every child.
Hora do banho, hora de sair para a escola.
That include bath time, time to go to school.
Isso. O programa Potencializando Habilidades é para ele, é para o bem-estar dele.
So the program is really focused into providing an individualized schedule and support for every child differently.
E juntamos toda a equipe uma vez no semestre para falar de cada um, em reuniões separadas.
So they have a meeting every semester to talk about every case with all the staff members.
E daí nós reestruturamos o que andou, o que foi feito para o próximo semestre.
And they make the adjustments for the following semester.
Sim. voltando um pouco, só mais uma, Nicolas, nós temos então, claro, na sondagem de uma intervenção precoce, nós temos as fases de desenvolvimento que são consideradas.
So to make this plan for this early intervention, they of course look at the developmental milestones.
Pela faixa etária, não leem, não escrevem, então é claro que vai se demorar mais para que a gente consiga ter um pouco mais de certeza se algo está faltando ali no seu desenvolvimento intelectual.
It's an assessment made with the age appropriate analysis, right, to provide what's necessary according to the different ages.
Isso. Então usamos esse plano para fazer a observação.
So
Então
this
nós
is the
temos.
template that they use to prepare this report.
Nós pegamos, então, vamos observar num jogo e na atividade, vamos descrever qual foi esse jogo, qual foi essa atividade.
So they select the game that was utilized through the assessment,
Adequado a cada faixa etária.
which is what's age appropriate.
Vamos colocar a descrição dos objetivos propostos
Then the desired goals
e as habilidades desenvolvidas.
and the skills that were developed.
E vamos fazendo esse controle. Abaixo do esperado, dentro do esperado, além do esperado.
And then they assign the result. It's below, within, or above the expected.
Essas observações chegam para a família.
This is the observation that will be given to the family.
Aí vamos ter algumas fotografias
And then we have some photos
com atividades preparadas para isso, com finalidades, com objetivos, cada uma delas.
showing these activities that were intentionally planned to assess every single child of the
Aqui,
program.
essa primeira anterior foi da educação infantil, essa aqui ainda também até 5 anos de idade,
So these photos are showing the children from 0 through 5,
com projetos então que são trimestrais para essa faixa etária.
with quarterly projects,
Pode passar a próxima, mais jogos, mais
games.
desenvolvimento da coordenação motora.
the fine motor skills. Thank you.
A próxima. Pode passar. O professor de educação física sempre junto com essa professora do PPH para dar ideias.
So the sport teacher is also very engaged with the teacher inside the classroom to help promote these fine motor skills.
E no planejamento de cada professor, ele vai colocar. Volte aquela, por favor, Nicolas. Isso. Eu tenho o aluno que não tem o diagnóstico, que pode cumprir perfeitamente, e ele não pode expor esse aluno, o que tem diagnóstico. Não. Esse aqui. Parou. O aluno, digamos que esse aqui não tem diagnóstico e fez essa atividade.
Okay, so the teacher's lesson plan includes children with or without diagnosis.
Ele sabe que o que tem diagnóstico não vai conseguir fazer a mesma
So
atividade.
the teacher knows that possibly the child with diagnosis will not achieve the same result as the other one.
Então, ele tem que ter uma outra atividade no mesmo lugar, opcional.
So he has to plan an alternative activity in the same occasion
Que ele saiba até onde vai a criança que vai conseguir fazer.
to give access to all children so they can reach different levels of results.
Sim. E para ela, o que ela alcançar ali já é o objetivo dela. E ele vai, então, fortalecer. Good, foi bem, foi longe, né?
So he needs to understand what would be the level of result that each child will be able to achieve individually, so they can greet and also motivate everyone differently.
Sim. A partir dos 6 anos,
After 6 years old,
nós temos, então, já o momento em que eles começam a alfabetização. A próxima, Nicolas,
they
por
start
favor.
the literacy,
Isso.
literacy development.
Os estudos de caso vão ficando um pouco mais com mais opções de ações, porque aí eles começam a ingressar no mundo das letras.
Yeah, because they are now learning the language, they will have different and more diverse strategies.
E continuam com a sondagem de habilidades, sempre as entrevistas com os professores,
And continue
observações
these
em sala de aula.
assessments.
Ok?
These assessments continue.
Sim. Também há uma intervenção uma vez por semana do programa PPH e diariamente a do professor com o trabalho de AEE.
Okay, so there is a weekly meeting with the intervention of this specialized professional from the program, and also the teacher with this IEP, right? EIP strategies. IEP.
Eu vou pedir agora um pequeno vídeo que é sobre uma criança, então, com um nível de suporte 2, que não estava alfabetizada e era muito agressiva.
So she's now going to show a video of a child that would be graded as a level 2, and this child wasn't yet reading and writing, but it was showing some aggressive behavior.
Isso. Vamos lá.
Muito bem, muito bem. Vamos lá, vamos lá. Próxima. Essa aqui, ó. Essa aqui, ó. Muito bem, muito bem.
Vamos.
Vai lá, agora é sequência.
Muito bem.
Muito bem. Vestido.
Muito bem.
Vaca.
Muito bem.
Muito bem.
Ai.
Como é que chama esse? Vassoura, muito bem. Como é que chama esse que você faz? Faca. O que a faca faz? O que ela faz?
Corta, muito bem.
Farofa.
Muito bem. Ferro.
Perceberam que na mesa, volta um pouquinho, Nicolas, só na foto, a fotografia dele, como vocês sabem, né, no tratamento, então ficam as fotos ali da sequência do que ele está fazendo, né?
So if you notice on the table, there are photos of the action that he's talking about.
Peço desculpas, não consegui colocar a tradução, mas acho que grande parte entendeu.
Yeah, she's just asking she's apologizing for not doing the captions in English.
Mas um detalhe, eu acho que vocês perceberam, quando fala uma palavra que é a faca, ela queria garantir que ele soubesse o que é a faca, não só que ele puxasse pelas letras iguais.
So when he saw the word faca, which would be knife, and the teacher was concerned that the child would not just understand the reading and the sound, but also the purpose of that.
E do V.
And also in Brazil, the faca and vaca would be completely two different words, but with very close sounds. And the first concern was to really understand the sound, but also later on she was concerned about connecting the meaning of that word as the child was able to read it correctly.
Numa ação, num planejamento, muitos objetivos, muitos.
So in just one action, many goals were being achieved here.
E que fosse também interessante, que fosse lúdico.
And that could be also at the same time something fun and
Onde entrou o
interesting.
canudo, né?
With the use of the straw that he was using to capture every piece of paper.
No final vamos fazer para vocês, para ver quem consegue pegar as letras com canudo.
So she's challenging everyone also at the end today to do the same here.
É um bom exercício, até para a respiração, né? E ele tem uma situação que a respiração ajudou muito.
It's
Muito
a good
bem.
breathing exercise too, because there is an issue with the child with breathing too.
Continuando as fotos do atendimento especializado, chegamos nos meninos a partir, então, nós temos ali já, estou identificando aqui 4º, 5º ano, mais velhos também, digamos que seja uma pré-adolescência para adolescência.
And now she has a few other photos of activities of this IEP strategies for the older group.
Momentos em que eles também gostam de trabalhar juntos, em alguns casos, ou não.
Yeah, and there are some times where they are invited to work together and they like to work in collaboration with their peers.
Então, a visão além do intelecto é observar esses detalhes.
So
A pessoa, a característica, não só o diagnóstico.
So the view beyond the intellect proposed in this approach is that you look at the child and to understand their own characteristics and not just the diagnosis, but also their personality.
E quando falamos de diagnóstico, vocês todos devem lembrar de quantos alunos, todos, que podem não atender intelectualmente, mas são muito inteligentes. Tem, então, os seus campos, né, mais aguçados de inteligência em alguns fatores, como nesse caso que nós vamos trazer do esporte.
So even for those who are diagnosed with intelligence challenges, they show intelligence in different ways, in different they express and manifest their intelligences in different ways, like in the sports.
Esse é o João Miguel, acho que o pessoal consegue acompanhar, né? Ele
Ok.
tem 12 anos, ele é da nossa escola do Rio de Janeiro. Aí vou te dar uma folga agora, né? Ele participa do programa Potencializando Habilidades da LBV. Ele tem, então, algumas situações para enfrentar, como o TDAH, o TOD, fortemente, e ele, então, canalizou para o esporte, para o judô, a energia, o potencial dele, que é muito grande. Ele, então, nesse momento, ele havia se classificado em segundo lugar numa eliminatória de judô que era estadual, digamos, e estava partindo para a nacional. Quer melhorar um pouquinho?
So this is one example because this student had a diagnosis in ADHD and ODD, and he was able to achieve a second place in the state championship, and he won the 4th place in the national championship of judo.
Esses estímulos são importantes. Da música, isso mesmo, merece mesmo. A música, o esporte. Temos lá uma orquestra.
And also not only the sports but also in the music, because the school has an orchestra of itself.
Teatro, karatê,
play,
já falamos, né? E essas atividades ajudam a incentivar o estudo.
Yeah, so theater, so this all help incentivize the study fields.
E nós precisamos ajudá-los na rotina. Acredito que todos que tenham estudantes com diagnóstico percebem que eles se perdem na organização do dia.
And one main focus of this support is to help the children achieve a routine and their daily schedule, because it's easy that they lose themselves in not achieving this kind of routines.
Nós também, né? Nos perdemos.
We do it too, right?
Cada um de nós tem um tipo de controle de rotina. Né?
we all have our own personal strategies
Muitos
to
no celular,
follow routines,
não é?
like using the cell phone.
Muitos ainda precisam da agenda física.
And sometimes even use that
Precisam ler para não esquecer, pois.
the old printed agenda.
É isso. E a gente, então, traz para eles, de uma maneira bem colorida, bem fácil para eles se organizarem, algumas propostas. Se vocês gostarem, depois a gente compartilha as telas.
So she can share the presentation with all of you, because they created very diverse strategies, very colorful options and templates that they utilize to help make the children understand and follow these routines.
Então, eles vão preencher, mediante o que a escola vai trazendo, o professor, quais são as atividades necessárias para casa. Ó. Aqui é uma letra, por exemplo, pode voltar, por favor, de um professor. Né?
So
então,
these are notes that the teacher give them for their homework, for example.
Não podemos dizer, anotem as atividades para fazer em casa, tragam amanhã. Onde? Vou colocar isso como?
So sometimes they cannot just announce what are the activities and their homework for tomorrow. So they use even the notes to do that.
E alguns, trouxemos agora na próxima tela, fazem uma organização de agenda muito interessante para a escola e os momentos também que estão em casa. Eles mesmos, depois, vão colocando as figuras, o que também é muito agradável. Ou eles marcam, mandamos as figuras e eles fazem ali a escolha. Então, eles planejam, né, a semana toda. E observem que, no sábado, tem o banho.
She's showing a template of a personalized schedule where they are not just bringing the activities inside the classroom hours, but also what they have to be doing at home. And the children help create this agenda using the icons and the drawings to help fill out this agenda. And she's highlighting that during Saturdays and Sundays, they have even the reminder to take shower.
A primeira da casa, né? Olha, a primeira da casa. A próxima já é a da escola. A da escola, vocês vão notar que ela tem ela é mais carregada, mas ele precisa, não pode bater um sinal e todo mundo sabe o que vai fazer, ele não lembra, ele não tem ainda essa possibilidade.
So this is a more detailed schedule for use inside the classroom hours, and because there are little things like even when the bell rings, they need to be reminded of what's going to happen, and the schedule is used to do that organization.
Prestigiando o professor Marcelo.
So she's highlighting Professor Marcelo here.
Olha ali, a aula de espanhol.
She's noticing that the Spanish classroom is part of this one schedule that she brought as a template.
E a de inglês, lá eles têm inglês e espanhol.
And also the English one, because they learn English and Spanish as second languages.
Sim. Aí a outra que vocês vão ver são as sugestões de distração, brincadeiras para conciliar com os momentos de estudo.
So this would be a schedule for suggestions in terms of how they can play and use games to supplement what they are doing in education.
Não sei se todas as figuras fazem sentido aqui, mas são figuras, por exemplo, de desenhos que eles gostam muito, e depois vem o período da escola para eles entenderem que tem uma parte que é para as brincadeiras e a outra que é para a escola, mas mesmo as brincadeiras têm ali o seu horário, né?
So even for the play, the schedule of play, they use cartoon and known signs to motivate the child to understand when there's time for play and when it's time for also school activities.
As professoras montam uma agenda num chaveiro.
It's a keychain where they organize this schedule for every child.
Que é fácil deles anotarem.
Which is easy to carry with them and take notes.
Ela já vem pronta com as divisões. E muitas vezes, num ano, eles recebem uma pronta e depois eles vão ajudar a confeccionar com a carinha deles, né, com o jeito deles.
So it is prepared by the teacher as a beginning template, but it will be built up through the activities by the child herself.
Também acredito que, se fôssemos perguntar aqui quantas estratégias são usadas, a gente ia amar. Eu gosto, quem quiser depois contar muitas coisinhas, né? Mas é muito bom da gente pensar que o tempo todo estamos falando não só num planejamento intelectual, mas no estudante com diagnóstico.
So she's talking about here that she knows that if she opens the floor here to hear all the different strategies that all of you utilizes to promote this kind of inclusion, we will be listening to wonderful stories and proposals. But what she's just highlighting here is this would be one way of achieving this, not just to attend the child's diagnosis, but going beyond.
Sim. Agora, então, nós temos a família.
Now it would be the family.
Que muitas vezes precisaríamos de um outro profissional só para atendê-la.
Because sometimes we would need a separate staff member just to focus on that.
Então, temos uma assistente social e uma psicóloga também por nível.
So, in that case, they assigned a social worker and a psychologist according to the age.
Para acolher, para abraçar, para dizer que está tudo bem.
To be receptive and understand and work with the parents to really tell them that everything is fine.
Principalmente quando chegam os diagnósticos.
Especially when they received for the first time the diagnosis.
Aí vem a visão além do intelecto.
And then it comes the view beyond the intellect.
Se for só o intelecto, cuidamos só do aluno, mas é além. A família precisa também ser cuidada.
So the family also must be cared at this very moment.
Então fazemos reuniões.
So these meetings,
geralmente por diagnóstico,
by diagnosis,
e elas trocam. Quando meu filho fez isso, eu agi assim.
They promote dialogues and exchange meetings so they can have a conversation.
Ele não queria calçar o tênis hoje e eu falei tal coisa e ele fez.
My child didn't want to put their shoes on, and then when I said this, it worked.
Uma família ajudando outra.
They are helping one another.
No começo, quase nenhum pai.
In the beginning, not many parents would show up.
Não sei aqui, mas lá sentiam quase que uma vergonha.
Sometimes they feel embarrassed to participate of such meetings.
Depois não.
But later, then they became very engaged.
Meu filho é maravilhoso.
My child is wonderful.
E é maravilhoso.
And he is. And he is.
Entregamos um portfólio com as atividades, que não é o mesmo portfólio dos meninos sem diagnóstico, então eles sabem e eles vão valorizar com esse aluno tudo que ele fez. Nossa, escreveu, leu, tirou tal nota.
And then they coordinate and prepare a portfolio to be given to the family to give them all the progress of their child in the school.
Sim. E, se preciso, a gente ajuda a encontrar um profissional para poder recebê-los, porque nem todos trabalhamos com muitas famílias, né, em situação de vulnerabilidade. Estão com tantas problemáticas financeiras que não sabem por onde começar. Então, precisamos ajudar. Pegar com a mão, é aqui, é ali, ajudá-las a lembrar de tudo que precisa ser feito.
And most of the cases, the school also needs to help them find the solutions and the professional support, because most of the families assisted, they are in vulnerable, socio-economically vulnerable situation, and the school needs to create these bridges and bring referrals and connect the professionals to support these families in their needs.
Nesse momento dessa foto, eles já avançaram, já são pais que estão inclusive participando de uma dinâmica,
So
né, de
this
uma
is an
brincadeira.
example of a photo of a kind of meeting that has already progressed a lot.
Todas essas dinâmicas são pensadas nas vivências de um pai que tem um filho com um diagnóstico, que ele precisa também ser feliz e sempre vai ter alguma coisa que tem a ver ali com a atitude dele com a criança.
And they create workshops to support the parents also to overcome these challenges, and especially into supporting the child to address some behavioral issues inside the classroom.
Isso nos deixa muito feliz porque nessa proposta da LBV de espiritualidade, de enxergar o que está dentro e não só o que está num diagnóstico e no exterior do aluno, os pais vêm junto.
So if you are in the task of promoting this view beyond the intellect, you are required to not just see the person with the diagnosis and what is outside, but also learning what's inside the child and the family member to really create this synergy and this solution. Não ainda.
Eu queria então finalizar.
So she would like to finish. She's saying that she crossed 5 minutes of the
É feio quem é
planned
da casa
time.
passar 5 minutos. Perdão.
She's saying that it's ugly for a person from the house to
Mas o meu
surpass
tempo
the-
foi gasto dobrado, não é? Eu
But-
ia gastar só a
But she
metade.
spent twice the time because I was required to translate it after.
Me ajudem.
Help her out.
Eu queria aproveitar e destacar a escola aqui da LBV, porque
So
nós
she-
tivemos aqui as 3 escolas lindamente se apresentando.
But she also wants to highlight this new school of the Legion of Goodwill, because we had the presentation of 3 wonderful schools of our community surrounding us here.
A nossa diretora, levanta, por favor,
So she wants to
Adriana
introduce
Parmegiani.
our school director, Adriana Parmegiani.
E agora
And now
eu vou pedir para as professoras se
she would
levantarem.
like to ask all the
Vamos
teaching
olhar para
staff to
trás e
please
ver as
rise.
professoras. Sim. Nossa homenagem a vocês. Pelas professoras da nossa escola, homenageamos todos os demais.
And through this honoring moment to the teachers of the LGW school, she also embraces all the educators and teachers present in this Congress.
Ok. Então, muito obrigada.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Periotto, for your presentation on the LGW Schools Network Inclusive Education Boosting Skills Program, A View Beyond the Intellect. And I would like to call the LGW's administrators in the USA, Mrs. Adriana and Danilo Parmegiani, that will pay an homage to our distinguished guests today. We will call, and as I call your name, if you can please come this way. Okay. Miss Barbara Clark, Miss Grace Blanco, Miss, stand up, please. Mr. Luiz Henriques, Mr. Brian Donovan, and Dr. Sueli Periotto. A big round of applause for our distinguished guests and speakers of today. These moments of great joy and exchange, everyone feels very happy in their hearts to be here. Thank you so much. That's a big smile. Look. We want everyone to look beautiful in this photo, want to be remembered. Okay, all right, let's. Okay. May I have your seat, please? One more thing, please. Okay. The questions we receive will be forwarded to our speakers, who will respond to them via email address you provided. We would like to remind everyone that all participants will receive a certificate of attendance for today's event. It's important for you to respond to the event evaluation, which will be sent out in a few days, as we aim to improve and to do our best for future editions. Now we will take a break for lunch. This is always good. Afterwards, please join us for 2 incredible practical workshops prepared for those who participated in the presentations this morning. They will be led by Mrs. Mariana Tamazan and Mr. Marcelo Rafael with the theme, Art and Play as Learning Strategies. And Ms. Mariana Tamazan is an early education childhood educator with over 15 years of classroom experience in public schools and private, as well as a developmental interventionist in early intervention programs. She holds an education specialist degree from Seton Hall University as a professional training from Harvard Graduate School of Education and a master's degree in teaching from Montclair State University with dual certifications in early childhood education and teacher of students with disabilities. Mr. Marcelo Rafael is an educator and pedagogue with a background in performing arts. He specializes in didactics in higher education, psychodrama, art therapy, and institutional psychopedagogy. He is a teacher at the José de Paiva Netto Educational Institute and the principal of the Mariah Educational Center, both in São Paulo, Brazil. So thank you all for your participation today. It's with great joy that we have you here. What's going on here? It looks like our 2 workshop facilitators are here with us. What a special invitation indeed. After lunch, we will be participating in the workshop Art and Play as Learning Strategies, with many ideas and suggestions to apply in the classroom. It's going to be awesome. Who thinks so? We call Mrs. Adriana and Danilo Parmegiani to give our workshop facilitators a small token of our appreciation. Miss Adriana. Yes. As we head down for refreshments, our school teaching staff will be in the classrooms, available for all participants who want to take a quick peek inside the classrooms. And remember that after the refreshments, please return here in this room for the workshops that will start promptly at 1 p.m. You will receive an evaluation questionnaire via forms later. We appreciate your feedback in advance to improve our future events. We've said that, but we can't say it enough. We just want to get better and better and better. We would like to acknowledge the names of our sponsors of this Congress. You may have a seat, which are very important to all of us. And they are Consulate General of Brazil in New York, Ciabras, Blockbuster Printing, PBA Printing, ACB Produce, Oliver Street School, Eastside High School, Lollytune, PepsiCo, Grupo Mulheres do Brasil, World Human Accountability Organization, Waxaw Udiana, Sadhu Vaswani Center for World Peace, Rádio Corações de Portugal. Lastly, receive our great gratitude for your participation in the LGW's 27th International Congress on Education. We will see you all in the next edition. So long. To all your hearts, we dedicate the most fraternal salute of peace. God is present, and Jesus lives in our hearts forever.